Chapter 3791. Why are you panicking? The blood ancestor glared at them and looked up at the blood-red palace. His blood-red eyes were filled with madness as he stared at the child and laughed. Purify the undead energy and get rid of your undead body. Do you really not care? As soon as he said that, the blood-red clothed child felt as if he had been struck by lightning. What did he say? Purify the undead energy? Get rid of his undead body? Did he hear that right? Was he crazy? How dare he say that? If you really don't care, then kill me. But as long as I die, you will lose the chance to be reborn. The blood ancestor laughed wildly. That's right. That's what he said. How is that possible? The child in blood-red clothes, who had been calm all this time, was suddenly in a mess. Seeing that the blood-red palace was about to attack, the illusory demon orb and demon vanquishing staff were ready to die. But at that moment the child roared, "Stop!" With a loud clang, the blood-red palace stopped above the blood ancestor and the two sovereign divine weapons. Its terrifying power sent them flying. Poof! The blood ancestor spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The shattered pieces of the two sovereigns' divine weapons also fell into the ground. Whoosh! The child took a step forward and rushed in front of the blood ancestor. He grabbed the blood ancestor's clothes and roared. "What did you just say?" He looked very nervous. The blood ancestor stared at the child and laughed. "Didn't you hear me clearly? Well, I'll say it again. Do you want to purify the undead energy? Do you want to get rid of your undead body?" The child's eyes trembled. "You have a way?" "Of course. But didn't you want to kill me? Come on!" The blood ancestor roared. The child's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he grabbed the blood ancestor's clothes tightly. How dare he yell at him like that? Did he know his place? If it were any other time, he would have killed him immediately. No. Before killing him, he had to torture him. But now, the child was a little hesitant. "Do you think I'm lying to you? Haha. What a joke. Why don't you think about it? This ancestor clearly knows that you have issued a kill order. Yet this ancestor still came out alone to wantonly hunt the skeletons and devour the souls of the dead? Am I that stupid?" The blood ancestor sneered. "You deliberately led us to you?" The child in blood-red clothes raised his eyebrows. "Not bad. We have a way to get rid of your undead bodies. Now it's not us begging you, it's you begging us. Why don't you try and kill me? Let's see if the Divine King of Chaos will let you go once he learns about this." The blood ancestor sneered. The look in the child's eyes became even more terrifying. "Look around. How many pairs of eyes are watching? Can you kill them all? As long as one of you escapes, this matter will reach the ears of the Divine King of Chaos. With the means of the Divine King of Chaos, I believe that you will soon come to hell to accompany me. Haha. Don't make this ancestor look down on you. Hurry up and kill." The blood ancestor laughed crazily, completely fearless. The blood-red clothed child looked up at the skeletons and ghosts around him. At this moment, the hearts of the skeletons and undead were also filled with shock. What did this old man say? He actually had a way to purify the undead chi and get rid of the undead body. What was more tempting to them than this? However, when they felt the terrifying gaze of the child in blood-red clothes, they immediately turned around and fled frantically. If the child in blood-red clothes really wanted to kill the blood ancestor, he would definitely kill them to silence them. Who wanted to die? No one wanted to die. Moreover, now that they knew that there was a way to get rid of the undead body in this world, they naturally didn't want to die. Because as long as they were alive, there was hope to get rid of the undead body and be reborn as a human. The child in blood-red clothes watched this scene silently. He didn't let the blood-red palace chase after them, because there were too many of them. Moreover, there were some undead who had mastered the ultimate profound of the strongest law. Although they were not as strong as him and the blood-red palace, if the other party wanted to escape, it would be difficult to kill so many undead. Phew. After a long time, the child in blood-red clothes took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his heart, and let go of the blood ancestor's clothes. The blood ancestor immediately collapsed on the ground. The child in blood-red clothes looked down at the blood ancestor condescendingly and said coldly, "You better be telling the truth. Otherwise, even if you want to die, I won't allow it. Then let's wait and see. The blood ancestor sneered and swallowed another divine life pill. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually panicking and cold sweat was dripping down his back. Because before, he was purely gambling. Fortunately, the goddess of luck still cared about him. Fortunately, the undead and skeletons were relatively smart. They knew that the child in blood-red clothes might kill them to silence them, so they immediately scattered. Otherwise, they would really be dead. At the same time, the illusory demon orb and the demon subduing wand's artifact spirits heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the child in blood-red clothes stop. Because if the child in blood-red clothes really killed the blood ancestor, he definitely wouldn't let them go. They had escaped death. They really didn't have a day of peace with these people. They had to be on tenterhooks all day long. It was tiring. They looked at the child in blood-red clothes again. He took out a blood-red chair and half reclined on it. Then he took out a blood-red gourd that looked like a wine flask. Do you know what's inside? The child in blood-red clothes looked at the blood ancestor. I don't know and I'm not interested. The blood ancestor also took out a chair and sat on it calmly. Although he looked very wretched, his aura didn't lose out to the bloodthirsty demon king. This is a divine brew brewed with fresh blood. It's delicious. The child in blood-red clothes smiled sinisterly and took a big gulp. A few drops of blood-red wine dripped from the corner of his mouth. His small face was full of intoxication. The blood ancestor was shocked when he saw this scene. Divine brew brewed with fresh blood. Was this telling him that if he dared to deceive him, he would be brewed into a divine brew while he was still alive? Just thinking about this scene made his scalp tingle. What a terrifying demon king. The blood ancestor was safe, but the Heavenly Bell divine treasury was in an uproar. No way. Get rid of his undead body. How is that possible? Why not? I heard the blood ancestor say that to the bloodthirsty demon king with my own ears. What kind of existence is the bloodthirsty demon king? How dare the blood ancestor lie to him? I think there's a 99% chance that it's true. Then did he say how to get rid of his undead body? No. It seems like he's waiting for that human Qin Feiyang. If this is true, then we have hope. Quick, find a way to inform the divine king of primal chaos and the other demon kings. We must not let the bloodthirsty demon king kill the blood ancestor. And that Qin Feiyang. This person is too important. Quickly spread this news and tell the undead along the way not to hurt him. For a time, Qin Feiyang and the blood ancestor became delicious cakes in the eyes of the undead. About half a day later, inside a huge ancient city, a slender figure was sitting on a throne in a large hall. This should be a woman. Her figure was petite and exquisite, and her skin was like ice crystals, suffused with a hazy crystal light. However, she wore a black mask on her face, and only a pair of black and white pupils could be seen. That's right. Her two pupils were white on one side and black on the other, exuding a strange aura. Lord Divine King. Suddenly, a 2-meter-tall man in black hurriedly ran into the hall. This person was the Black Flame Demon King, and to be called Lord Divine King by him, it was naturally the Divine King of Primal Chaos. In other words, the masked woman sitting in the high position was the ruler of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the Divine King of Primal Chaos. The Divine King of Primal Chaos was actually a woman. This was probably something that no one had expected. Why are you in such a panic? The Divine King of Primal Chaos raised her eyebrows, seemingly very displeased. And the voice was like an oriole leaving the valley, crisp and pleasant. Judging from the voice, it seemed to be an 18 or 19-year-old girl. My lord, you can't blame me for losing my composure. Because this news is too shocking. The Black Flame Demon King roared. Because of his huge size, his voice was also very loud, coupled with his somewhat excited mood at this moment. His voice was like thunder, causing the Divine King of Primal Chaos eardrums to vibrate. The Divine King of Primal Chaos rubbed her ears, and looked at the Black Flame Demon King suspiciously. This was the first time she had seen this big guy so excited, so she asked suspiciously, "What news?" Previously, a sovereign divine weapon contacted the demon castle through the contract bridge, saying that Bloodthirsty has found the blood ancestor. The Black Flame Demon King said. So fast. The divine king of primal chaos was taken aback and nodded. It is indeed good news. No. That's not what I want to say. The black flame demon king waved his hand. Then what other news can there be? The divine king of primal chaos was puzzled. The black flame demon king breathed heavily and said, I heard this blood ancestor has a way to get rid of our undead bodies. What? The divine king of primal chaos suddenly stood up. Although her expression couldn't be seen, it wasn't difficult to see from her black and white eyes that she was quite shocked at this moment. Divine king of primal chaos. At this moment, another thin and frail old woman in a green robe hurriedly ran into the hall. The divine king of primal chaos looked at the old woman and frowned. You also came for the news of the blood ancestor? You already know? The old woman was stunned. Black Flame already told me. The divine king of primal chaos slowly returned to his seat with a thoughtful look. The old woman looked at the black flame demon king and coldly snorted. You're really fast. Old woman, you're not slow either. The black flame demon king sneered. Humph. The old woman snorted through her nose, looked up at the divine king of primal chaos, and asked, My lord, what do you think of this matter? No hurry. Let's wait for the others to arrive first. The divine king of primal chaos shook his head. The so-called others were naturally referring to the other demon kings. Since the black flame demon king and the old woman had received the news, the other demon kings must have been no exception. Perhaps, they were already on their way here. Chapter 3792. As expected. In less than half an hour, the other 6 demon kings arrived, their faces full of excitement and disbelief. Why don't I see Queen of Flames? Black Flame Demon King was suspicious. I don't know. I heard that she's in seclusion somewhere, integrating the inheritance of the Law of Lightning. The old woman shook her head. Then let's leave her alone. Black Flame Demon King looked up at the Divine King of Primal Chaos. The old woman and the others also looked up, waiting for the Divine King of Primal Chaos decision. The Divine King of Primal Chaos pondered for a while, then looked at the 8 and said, This is no small matter. After all, it has caused a sensation in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, and it's indeed very important to us. Then what do you mean? Black Flame Demon King asked. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said, Inform Bloodthirsty Demon King to bring the Blood Ancestor and Qin Feiyang to the royal city of Primal Chaos. I want to verify the authenticity of this matter personally. What if it's true? The old woman asked tentatively. Then we can't kill Qin Feiyang and the Blood Ancestor. You can imagine that if this is true, then not only us, but all the undead in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure will go after them. These undead may even become enemies with us for Qin Feiyang and the Blood Ancestor. So we have to deal with it properly. But it's too early to say this. Let's discuss it after the verification. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said. Yes. The 8 responded respectfully and immediately let the Sovereign Divine Weapon beside them contact Bloodthirsty Demon King's Sovereign Divine Weapon, the Blood Ancient Palace. So fast? When the Blood Ancient Palace received the news and informed Bloodthirsty Demon King couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Fortunately, he didn't kill them. Otherwise, it would have been a big deal. He knew the Divine King of Primal Chaos temper better than anyone else. As long as they made a mistake, even the 10 Demon Kings wouldn't tolerate it. In the blink of an eye, several days passed. In the sky above a mountain range, the Horsedale Whisk carried Qin Feiyang and the others as fast as lightning. Madman looked at the skeletons below and frowned. Old Qin, did you notice anything wrong? What's wrong? Qin Feiyang stared at the madman in a daze, unable to react. Madman said, Look at the way those skeletons are looking at us. Why do they seem to be trying to curry favor with us? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Daifuku and the others were also stunned. They then lowered their heads to look at the skeletons below. Although these skeletons did not have flesh and blood, and their expressions could not be seen, from the emotions revealed by their souls, one could really feel a hint of flattery. What's going on? Everyone was a little confused. This doesn't make sense. Very soon, They encountered another undead that had condensed a physical body. Now he could see more clearly. This was because the undead who had condensed a physical body could clearly see his expression and eyes. In the face and eyes of the undead, they did not see the slightest hostility. Instead, they were full of kindness. This time, the group of people was confused. How did it suddenly become like this? How much longer? Qin Feiyang looked at the horsetail whisk and asked. It seems to be in front. The horsetail whisk said. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the mountains and rivers in front of him. He didn't know if he didn't look, but when he looked he was shocked. The mountains and rivers in front of him, including the void, were actually filled with a large number of skeletons and undead. Just in one direction, there were probably no less than hundreds of thousands of them. There were huge skeletons of beasts, human-shaped skeletons emitting purple-gold divine light, and many undead that had condensed a physical body. It's Qin Feiyang. Hurry up and get out of the way. With a cry of alarm, the skeletons and undead in front turned to look at Qin Feiyang and the others. Then they all retreated to the side and made a path. Seeing this scene, Qin Feiyang and the others' eyes almost popped out. This was too strange. Why did it feel like they were honored guests now? Could it be related to the undead barrier-breaking pill? The madman was surprised. Maybe. Without confirmation, Qin Feiyang didn't dare to be sure. Wait. This can't be a trap, right? They want to trick us into their encirclement. Yin Xiang was surprised. Trap. Everyone looked at each other. Look, it's the blood ancestor. Daifuku pointed to the void in front of him and shouted. Madman looked up and cursed. Damn, he's still sitting there so casually. He's quite relaxed. It's good that he's fine. Qin Feiyang smiled. Immediately after, the group of people looked at the void opposite the blood ancestor, and their pupils immediately shrank. He's the bloodthirsty demon king. Li Zhongxing stared at the blood-red child and said in a deep voice. He's really a brat? The madman frowned. Li Zhongxing glanced at the madman and said, I'll say it again, don't be fooled by his appearance. Everyone nodded. At the same time, the blood ancestor, the blood-red child, and the three rulers' divine weapons also sensed the aura of Qin Feiyang and the others. The blood ancestor turned to look at Qin Feiyang, and the others with a smile on his face. The demon vanquishing wand and the illusory demon orb could finally be relieved of their worries. Because once Qin Feiyang arrived, even the bloodthirsty demon king couldn't kill them because they already had enough rulers' divine weapons. As for the crimson-clothed child and the crimson hall, they were sizing up Qin Feiyang curiously. Swish. A group of people landed beside the blood ancestor. Looking at the unfamiliar face of the old poison, the blood ancestor looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, He is an old poison. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the bloodstains on the blood ancestor's body. He asked with concern, Are you okay? After a few days, the blood ancestor's injuries had healed, but the bloodstains on his body were still there, so it wasn't hard for Qin Feiyang and the others to see that the bloodthirsty demon king had severely injured the blood ancestor. I almost died. The blood ancestor shook his head. Qin Feiyang smiled comfortingly. Good fortune awaits those who survive. Of course. The blood ancestor laughed. Don't waste time. Since you're all here, follow me to the primal chaos royal city. The blood-red child stood up and put away the chair he was sitting on. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the others. What? To the primal chaos royal city? Xiao Shui, the old poison, and Li Zhongxing's expressions changed drastically. Qin Feiyang and the others narrowed their eyes. What was the meaning of taking them directly to the primal chaos royal city? This is an order from the divine king. If you dare to say no, you know the consequences. The blood-red child smiled coldly. Why should we say no? Qin Feiyang asked. The blood-red child froze for a moment, then looked at Qin Feiyang with a smile and said, You're quite bold, but you'd better pray that you can really help us get rid of our undead bodies. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have dared to let the ancestor lure you out here. Please lead the way. Qin Feiyang smiled. Seeing Qin Feiyang's confident expression, the blood-red child frowned. Could it really be possible? Then he became inexplicably excited. Soon after, a divine might descended from the Golden Palace, sweeping up the blood-red child, Qin Feiyang, and the others before turning into a streak of light and shooting through the sky. The skeletons and undead in front of them quickly retreated to the side. Ancestor, what's going on with these skeletons and undead? Qin Feiyang asked secretly. Speaking of which, it's because I'm smart. Otherwise, I might have been killed by this little bastard. The blood ancestor stared at the blood-red child's back and snorted coldly. Then he secretly explained the whole matter in a simple and clear manner. So that's how it is. It seems that these skeletons and undead came after hearing the news. They're indeed trying to curry favor with us. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. But it was indeed a little dangerous. The madman transmitted his voice. MHM. Qin Feiyang nodded. The blood ancestor glanced at the old poison and asked secretly, "What's the situation with this old man?" Qin Feiyang also secretly told the blood ancestor about the old poison's situation. Poison? The blood ancestor's face was full of surprise. Seeing the blood ancestor looking at him, the old poison grinned at the blood ancestor. His smile was a little sinister, making the blood ancestor's hair stand on end. It was better not to get too close to such an old poison. About 3 days later, the blood-red palace led Qin Feiyang and the others across the mountains and finally saw a huge city. There were countless buildings in the city. Some of the buildings even towered into the clouds. The entire city was black, and the city walls were hundreds of feet tall. It was like a black python lying on the ground, emitting a cold and ancient aura. At the same time, although the ancient city didn't have a powerful ruler's aura, it gave people a sense of oppression and fear. This is the Chaos Royal City. The blood-red child smiled sinisterly and said without turning his head, "It's too late for you to regret it now. We didn't deceive you. What's there to regret?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Whoosh. Before he finished speaking, several figures flew out of the city and landed on top of the city walls. Shocking demonic auras instantly surged over. When Xiao Shui, Li Zhongxing, and the old poison saw these people, their faces turned pale. They couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. This was because these people were the Black Flame Demon King and the others. The 8 Demon Kings. No. Including the Blood-Red Child, there were 9 Demon Kings. Usually, just 1 Demon King was enough to make them tremble in fear, let alone 9 Demon Kings. Even Yunxiang, the Blood Ancestor, Azure Dragon, the Crazy One, and Daifuku couldn't help but feel nervous. Qin Feiyang, on the other hand, was relatively calm. Whoosh. The Blood-Red Palace led a group of people above the city walls and disappeared into the Blood-Red Child's body. The Blood-Red Child also landed beside the Black Flame Demon King and the others. Seeing that Qin Feiyang and the Blood Ancestor were fine, the Black Flame Demon King and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that the Blood-Red Child would act rashly and kill Qin Feiyang and the others. "It's been a few years. How have you been, Lord Demon King?" Qin Feiyang glanced at the Demon Kings. Each of them was unfathomable. Finally, he looked at the Black Flame Demon King and cupped his hands with a smile. "I thought that you would be in dire straits these years, but I didn't expect that you would be doing so well. You even attracted the attention of the Divine King." A cold light flashed in the Black Flame Demon King's eyes. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." Qin Feiyang chuckled. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was chatting with the Black Flame Demon King, Li Zhongxing and the others admired him from the bottom of their hearts. Who could compare with such courage? Chapter 3793. It's indeed quite disappointing. The Black Flame Demon King put on a fake smile. The 9 Demon Kings gathered together, emitting an invisible pressure that was enough to intimidate any living being. Li Zhongxing and the other 2 could be considered powerful figures, but at this time, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They couldn't be blamed for being timid. It was because the fierce reputation of the 9 Demon Kings was too deeply rooted in people's hearts. If they were in the Sky Cloud realm, their fierce reputation would be enough to scare children to tears. "Then I will work harder next time and not let you down, Lord Demon King." Qin Feiyang chuckled. Even if he lost, he couldn't lose. Even if the 9 Demon Kings were fierce, he couldn't appear too weak. Moreover, he had made his judgment based on his ability to do so. Just as the blood ancestor said, it wasn't them begging these people, but these people begging them. Whether or not to give them the undead barrier-breaking pill would depend on his mood. Then this king will wait. The Black Flame Demon King said with a fake smile. He didn't invite Qin Feiyang and the others to enter the Primal Chaos Royal City and said indifferently, "Hurry up and verify it. Only after verification will you be qualified to talk to us as equals." So anxious? It seems that all of you are eager to get rid of your undead body. Qin Feiyang glanced at the 9 Demon Kings and smiled slightly. Of the 9 Demon Kings, apart from the Black Flame Demon King, the Bloodthirsty Demon King, and the green-robed old woman, the other 6 were 3 men and 3 women. One of them was a young man and a woman, about 25 or 26 years old. The man was dressed in white, with a dignified appearance and an extraordinary temperament. The woman was young and beautiful. Her snow-white hair fluttered in the wind, and her snow-white dress was spotless. She was like a fairy in a painting, stunning beyond compare. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, the white-robed woman's delicate face bloomed with a bright smile. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "Purifying the undead energy, and getting rid of the undead body. I believe that none of the undead in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure doesn't desire it. She is Snow Queen, known as the #1 beauty of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." Xiao Shui transmitted her voice. "What is she? In my opinion, Sister Shui, you are the #1 beauty in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." Before Qin Feiyang and the others could speak, Li Zhongxing spoke first. His words were full of flattery. Xiao Shui rolled her eyes. It wasn't easy for him to find a sense of security around this person, but he didn't expect him to return to his true nature. Sure enough, it was easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change one's nature. Qin Feiyang looked at Snow White Queen and said with a smile, "Your Majesty Queen is very straightforward, not concealing her inner desires at all. You're a smart person. No matter how I try to hide, I'm afraid I can't escape your eyes." The Snow White woman smiled. "You flatter me, sir. Junior's vision isn't that ruthless." Qin Feiyang waved his hand in embarrassment. "Don't waste time, okay?" Seeing Qin Feiyang and Snow White Queen chatting and laughing, the white-clothed youth at the side could not help but raise his eyebrows, a look of impatience on his face. "He is Demon King Fengtian. I think his real name is Bai Fengtian," Li Zhongxing thought to himself. "Demon King Fengtian," Qin Feiyang murmured, sized up Demon King Fengtian, and said with a faint smile, "Since Lord Demon King is so impatient, at this point." Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at Xiao Shui and said with a smile, "Then let's begin." "All right." Xiao Shui nodded and took out the jade box. In an instant, the eyes of the 9 great demon kings all fell on the jade box. Could it be that the thing that could let them get rid of their undead bodies was in this jade box? As Xiao Shui opened the jade box, a wave of pure yang qi suddenly surged out like a tide. Elixir? Snow White Queen was stunned. She never thought that it would actually be an elixir. "This is personally refined by me. In this world, there are only 2 people who know how to refine this elixir. One is me, and the other is my brother. However, he didn't come to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure." Qin Feiyang looked at the 9 great demon kings and smiled. The 9 great demon kings felt a chill in their hearts. These words were clearly hinting that they had better be polite to him. Qin Feiyang continued, "Before Xiao Shui takes this elixir, I hope that everyone can first confirm Xiao Shui's identity and see if she's really an undead. Otherwise, you might think that I'm using a living person to fool you." The 9 great demon kings sized up Xiao Shui. From Xiao Shui's body, they could indeed feel undead qi. Snow White Queen's gaze turned to Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "No need to worry so much, let's begin." "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded and turned to look at Xiao Shui. He reminded her, "Bear with it, the process will be very painful. As long as I can get rid of my undead body, any pain is worth it." Xiao Shui's gaze was extremely firm. Without hesitation, she grabbed the undead barrier-breaking elixir and put it into her mouth. Prepared to help her transcend the tribulation, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and various sovereign divine weapons appeared. And it was a total of 10 sovereign divine weapons. This was because when Li Zhongxing transcended the tribulation last time, The 6 sovereign divine weapons had almost failed to block it. Even if they managed to block it in the end, they were all heavily injured. In their current situation, the sovereign divine weapons absolutely could not be damaged. If these demon kings wanted to burn the bridge after crossing the river and harm them, having an additional sovereign divine weapon would be an additional source of strength. The moment she took the undead barrier-breaking elixir, the terrifying pure yang energy spread throughout Xiao Shue's body. She felt like she was in a sea of fire, and the pain was unbearable. She couldn't help but scream. "Little sister Shui, you must endure it. Don't worry about the tribulation. We will help you," Li Zhongxing called out anxiously. Xiao Shui nodded and sat cross-legged in the air. Because of the pain, large beads of sweat had already appeared on her forehead. However, she gritted her teeth and endured. The old poison also looked at Xiao Shui with anticipation and nervousness. If she could really get rid of her undead body, then being controlled by Qin Feiyang would be a blessing in disguise. Rumble. Crack. Not long after, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Bolts of blood-red lightning crazily roared in the clouds, emitting terrifying heavenly might. Has it already begun? In the palace of the city, the divine king of primal chaos heard the commotion of the tribulation and walked out of the palace. He looked up at the tribulation clouds in the sky with a trace of anticipation in his eyes. Crack! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the first bolt of tribulation descended. It was like a giant blood-red python as it charged toward Xiao Shui. Fraud! Li Zhongxing shouted. Although Xiao Shui could withstand the first few bolts of tribulation, he wouldn't allow Xiao Shui to be injured. "You want me to help you pick up girls? You're really something." The 9 Flames Divine Staff looked at him with disdain and roared at the Ice Snow Divine Sword. "Little Sister Ice, you don't have to come. I'm enough." Boom. Divine might surged out as the 9 Flames Divine Soul rushed above Xiao Shui and easily blocked the first bolt of tribulation. Crack. The second bolt, the third bolt, the fourth bolt. When the 10th bolt of tribulation descended, the 9 Flames Divine Staff couldn't withstand it anymore. It roared at the other sovereign divine weapons. "Come and help. Don't just stand there and watch. Aren't you very capable?" The Horsetail Whisk sneered. No. Compared to you guys, I'm nothing. Please hurry up. Don't embarrass me in front of little sister Ice," the 9 Flames Divine Staff begged. "You're just trying to save face." The Horsetail Whisk and the other sovereign divine weapons looked at it with disdain. They didn't stand by and watch anymore. They all came to life and rushed to the 9 Flames Divine Staff side. The 11 sovereign divine weapons began to work together to resist the tribulation. Seeing this scene, the 9 demon kings couldn't help but frown. It actually required so many sovereign divine weapons to work together. The power of this tribulation was too ridiculous. What's this little bit of power? I can easily deal with it with my own strength. The voice of the blood-red palace sounded. It was filled with disdain. Snow White smiled. "It's not good to say that. After all, you're not on the same level as them. If they know that we're not on the same level, then they should know better. Don't be so arrogant in front of us." The blood-red clothed child harumphed. Snow White was slightly taken aback. She shook her head and smiled. "It seems that the two of you are very dissatisfied with them." The blood-red clothed child didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with killing intent. Sky Tribute Demon King frowned. "Snow White, why does it seem like you have a good impression of them? Putting aside the grudge between us and the blood ancestor, Qin Feiyang gave me a good first impression. Although I don't know him well, it's not hard to tell from his actions that he's a young man who knows how to respect others." Snow White smiled. "You have such a high opinion of him?" Sky Tribute Demon King raised his eyebrows as jealousy rose in his heart. After being together for so many years, even he had never been given such a high opinion by Snow White. What did a puny Qin Feiyang have to do? "No matter what you say, I've never seen him respect others," Black Flame Demon King interjected. "That's because you're the one who entered first. You've had conflicts with him since a long time ago, so whether it's you or him, both of you have a big prejudice against each other." Snow White smiled faintly. "Whatever. Anyway, he's an ant-like existence. When I get rid of my undead body, I'll kill him. Black Flame Demon King sneered. It's not good to burn the bridge after crossing it, right? Snow White frowned. What else? Do you really treat him like an ancestor? You may be happy, but I'm not. Black Flame Demon King sneered. Snow White shook her head. There was no other way. This was the personality and means of the Demon Kings. When you were valuable, they could let you go, but once you lost your value, they would definitely not show mercy. Boom. Thunder rumbled. The last tribulation descended. With 11 sovereign weapons working together, they were able to withstand the tribulation with ease. As the tribulation ended, auspicious clouds rolled over. Shwa. A golden ray of auspicious light descended from the sky and directly drowned Xiao Shui. At this moment, the 9 Demon Kings, Old Poison, and even the Primal Chaos Divine King, who was standing in the sky above the city, looked at Xiao Shui with a nervous and expectant expression. Because success or failure was at this moment. The scene was dead silent. Xiao Shui became the center of attention. Because at this moment, many skeletons and undead had gathered in the sky above the mountains around the city. They were also nervously waiting. Chapter 3794. In the Void. At this moment, Xiao Shui's physical body was actually slowly dissipating, but her expression was exceptionally peaceful, as if the dissipation of her physical body did not bring her any pain. What's going on? The 9 Demon Kings were bewildered. Her physical body was actually dissipating. Could it be that she had failed the tribulation? Li Zhongxing also had a look of anxiety. Don't worry. She's destroying her undead body and reconstructing a real physical body. Qin Feiyang comforted. I see. Li Zhongxing heaved a sigh of relief, recalling the scene of him transcending the tribulation. It seemed that because his undead body was shattered by the tribulation, he directly began to reconstruct his physical body after successfully transcending the tribulation. In other words, this process was skipped. As expected, after Xiao Shui's physical body completely dissipated, leaving only her clothes and interspatial ring, the soul of the undead was exposed under the golden auspicious light, and the undead aura contained within was quickly purified. Immediately after, her dissipated physical body began to reconstruct at a speed visible to the naked eye. Time passed quietly. A moment later, a living Xiao Shui appeared in front of everyone. Her skin was crystal clear like a newborn baby's. In addition to her good looks, standing in the golden auspicious light at this moment, she was like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Li Zhongxing was dumbfounded. It was too beautiful. She was simply a goddess. Right at this moment, Xiao Shui opened her eyes and quickly put on the clothes that were floating at the side, and put on the interspatial ring. The golden auspicious light also began to surge into her body. Very soon, her entire body appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The 9 Demon Kings released their divine senses one after another and enveloped Xiao Shui. With one look, they were all overjoyed. At this moment, they could not sense any undead aura in Xiao Shui's body at all. She was a living person. It really works. The Old Poison was stunned for a moment and was also overjoyed. Looking at the reactions of the Demon Kings, could it really work? The skeletons and undead outside the city looked at the group of people above the city wall in bewilderment. They were also extremely nervous. As they did not dare to get too close to the chaotic royal city, they could not hear the conversation between Qin Feiyang and the others. As the Demon Kings were present, they did not dare to release their divine senses, so they did not know what the situation was like. Sister Shui, how do you feel? Li Zhongxing rushed to Xiao Shui and asked. Xiao Shui examined herself before closing her eyes to examine her body. After a long time, she finally opened her eyes and looked at Li Zhongxing. She felt as if she was dreaming, and she couldn't speak for a long time. Don't get too excited. I was just like you in the beginning. Li Zhongxing smiled. But before Li Zhongxing could finish his words, Xiao Shui suddenly threw herself into Li Zhongxing's embrace as tears flowed from her eyes. These were tears of joy. However, this sudden happiness caught Li Zhongxing off guard. Sister Snow actually took the initiative to hug him? This must be a dream. If it was really a dream, then he would live in a dream for the rest of his life and never wake up. The demon kings took a deep breath and raised their heads to look at Qin Feiyang. Their gazes instantly changed, because Qin Feiyang had already shown his worth. Bring them into the city. The voice of the Divine King of Chaos rang out. What? The Divine King of Chaos actually allowed them to enter the Chaos Imperial City? This is something that has never happened before. It seems that this Qin Feiyang can really help us get rid of our undead bodies. This is really exciting news. The surrounding skeletons and undead were all extremely excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They couldn't wait to rush over and snatch Qin Feiyang away from the hands of the demon kings. This was a treasure. However, in the end, reason prevailed over impulse. With their strength, they didn't have the qualifications to challenge the demon kings. Sister Shui. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. After Li Zhongxing came back to his senses, under the encouraging gazes of Qin Feiyang and the rest, he slowly raised his hands and gently hugged Xiao Shui, who was in his embrace. He muttered to himself in his heart with a satisfied smile on his face. He didn't ask for anything else. As long as he could hug her like this often, he would be satisfied. However, Xiao Shui quickly reacted. Her face immediately turned red as she pushed Li Zhongxing away and said angrily, "What are you doing?" Huh? Li Zhongxing looked at Xiao Shui. What kind of creature was this woman? She changed her face faster than flipping a book? You were the one who took the initiative to hug me, and now you're reprimanding me. Isn't this unfair? Understand. Qin Feiyang patted his shoulder and laughed. I don't understand. Do men have to suffer such grievances? Li Zhongxing snorted coldly. After Xiao Shui calmed down, she remembered that she was the one who took the initiative to hug him. Her face was immediately filled with embarrassment. She then looked at the aggrieved Li Zhongxing and coughed dryly. I'm sorry. It's nothing. Anyway, in your eyes, I'm an unreliable man. I'm already used to it. Li Zhongxing waved his hand, his face filled with sadness. Are you done? I've already apologized to you. What else do you want? Xiao Shui frowned. Even if you want to apologize, you have to be sincere. Li Zhongxing snorted coldly. His eyes turned as he pointed to the side of his face and chuckled. For example, a kiss. Scram. Xiao Shui's face instantly darkened. Qin Feiyang was also speechless. He had said it so many times, but why couldn't he change his character? Originally, Xiao Shui felt a little apologetic in her heart. A slightly smarter man would seize this opportunity to further improve their relationship. But Li Zhongxing, at this crucial moment, he actually revealed his wretched side, causing the little bit of apologetic feeling in Xiao Shui's heart to disappear. Wasn't he looking for trouble for himself? After all, he had lived 2 lives. Why was it so hard to teach him? It seemed that he was destined to be a bachelor for the rest of his life. Thank you. Xiao Shui no longer paid attention to Li Zhongxing. She looked at Qin Feiyang and bowed gratefully. It's fine. This is my promise to you. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. Xiao Shui was stunned when she heard this. These words were too heartwarming. It was more than 5 to 6 times better than a certain wretched man. How could there be such a huge gap between people? Are you done chatting? Demon King Fengtian looked at the few of them impatiently. He was already restraining himself. Because if it was any other time, once the Divine King of Primal Chaos gave an order, no matter who you were, you would immediately follow him. If you dared to delay, you would suffer his anger. Of course, this was also because of the undead barrier breaking pill. Without the undead barrier breaking pill, wanting him to accommodate you like this? Dream on. Qin Feiyang glanced at Demon King Fengtian and the other demon kings. He smiled and said, Sorry, I was too happy and chatted a little more. Please lead the way. The 9 demon kings turned and flew toward the center of the city. Are we really going in? This is a dragon's pool and tiger's den. Once we enter, we will need the permission of the Divine King of Primal Chaos to come out. Old Poison hurriedly said. No matter what, he didn't want to enter this place. Do we have a choice now? Azure Dragon smiled bitterly. Since they had already come to this point, there was no way they could retreat. If they dared to say no now, the 9 demon kings would definitely make a move on them without hesitation. In short, the arrow on the bow had to be shot. Old Poison's expression froze. Suddenly, he thought of an idea and said with a flattering smile, "How about I wait for you outside? Not a single one of you can be missing. All of you follow us." But before he finished speaking, Demon King Fengtian's voice sounded again. Old Poison's face turned pale. He could only follow Qin Feiyang and the others and the 9 demon kings to the main hall in the center of the city. The entire Primal Chaos Royal City was divided into several districts. But such a big city, there wasn't a single living being in sight. It was dead silent. After a few breaths, they finally arrived in front of the main hall. The door was open, and they could see the Divine King of Primal Chaos sitting on the throne. A woman. Frenzy was surprised. The ruler of the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure, the strongest expert, was actually a petite woman. It was truly surprising. "Come in." The Divine King of Primal Chaos spoke. His voice was as clear and pleasant as a young girl's. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and took a deep breath. They followed the 9 demon kings into the main hall. The layout of the main hall was very simple. The 10 black chairs were all made of stone. 4 stone pillars that were half a meter thick stood in the 4 corners of the room. Divine dragons were attached to them. After the 9 demon kings entered the main hall, they sat on the 10 stone chairs. But because Queen Flame was dead, there was only 1 empty stone chair left. "Is this how you treat your guests?" Frenzy raised his eyebrows. "It's already a great honor for you to be able to enter the Primal Chaos Royal City. You want to be on the same level as us? Do you have the right?" Demon King Black Flame sneered. "We don't even have the right to sit?" Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He looked at the high and mighty Demon King Black Flame and said with a faint smile, "Then why are we still here? Goodbye." With that, he led everyone away. Impudent. Demon King Fengtian suddenly stood up, and a terrifying demonic aura rolled toward Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang stopped and slowly turned to look at Demon King Fengtian with a smile. "Are you sure you want to attack? Do you know the price of doing so?" "What a joke. How dare you talk to me about the price? Do you think you can do whatever you want in front of us just because you have that pill?" Demon King Fengtian walked toward Qin Feiyang and the others with an aggressive aura. "You're right. I have the undead barrier breaking pill, so I can do whatever I want. Why don't we go out and see if those undead and skeletons outside the city want this pill?" Qin Feiyang smiled indifferently. Since they were already here, what was the use of being afraid? It would only make the other party think that they were easy to bully. Therefore, they had to be strong. Only then could they make the other party bow down. "Indeed, we should think about it," Frenzy said lazily with a smile. "We don't have any ready-made undead barrier-breaking pill in our hands. The last one has already been given to Qiao Shui. If you kill us, I'm sorry, but you'll never get another undead barrier-breaking pill." "Are you threatening me?" Demon King Fengtian's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Yes, I'm threatening you." Frenzy bared his teeth. "I'm going to eat you, so what?" Chapter 3795. Qin Feiyang and Madman were openly provoking him. Not to mention the dignified Demon King Fengtian. Any other person would definitely be furious. Therefore, at this moment, Demon King Fengtian stared at the 2 of them. His clenched fists made cracking sounds, and the killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. "Don't scare us like that. We are very fragile. If we are not careful, we will faint. At that time, we will have to trouble you to save us. That is not important. What is important is that it is a waste of time. Don't you want to get rid of your undead bodies as soon as possible?" Madman patted his chest with a timid look, but his eyes were full of ridicule. Courting death. Demon King Fengtian could no longer hold back the killing intent in his heart. He raised his hand and slapped towards Qin Feiyang and the others. "Fengtian, stop. I don't see Lord Divine King here. How can you make decisions on your own?" The green-robed old woman saw that the situation was not good and hurriedly shouted. When Demon King Fengtian heard this, he immediately shivered and turned to look at the Divine King of Primal Chaos. When he saw that the divine king of primal chaos had a sinister look in his eyes, he hurriedly knelt on the ground and said in fear, "This subordinate did not mean to exceed my authority. Please forgive me." Divine King, Feng Tian was impulsive. "I hope Lord Divine King can be magnanimous and give him a way out." The other demon kings also spoke one after another, pleading for Demon King Feng Tian. Seeing this scene, Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. Logically speaking, with their relationship, it was normal for Demon King Feng Tian to want to kill them. But because of this, all the demon kings came out to plead for Demon King Feng Tian. From the looks of it, this seemingly petite divine king of primal chaos was extraordinarily ruthless. The divine king of primal chaos looked at Demon King Feng Tian in silence. This made Demon King Feng Tian break out in cold sweat and panic to the extreme. 10 breaths later, the divine king of primal chaos finally spoke, breaking the dead silence. He said indifferently, "Prepare a seat for them." Hearing this, the demon kings heaved a sigh of relief. Demon King Feng Tian almost collapsed powerlessly. One could imagine how nervous he was in these short 10 breaths. Immediately after, he turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang and the others. With a wave of his hand, several stone chairs appeared and were neatly placed on one side of the hall. "How could we trouble Lord Demon King to personally prepare seats for us?" Madman chuckled, walked over, and sat down. His smug expression made Heaven Flattery Demon King gnash his teeth in anger. "Thank you." Qin Feiyang looked at Heavenly Demon King and smiled. He led Li Zhongxing and the others over and sat down. "Don't say it. I'm really flattered by this treatment." Li Zhongxing winked at Xiao Shui. "Don't celebrate too early." Xiao Shui glanced at the 9 demon kings and the divine king of primal chaos, the worry in her heart growing stronger. This was because everyone knew that the primal chaos god king was being so polite, because of the undead barrier breaking pellet. Once Qin Feiyang refined the undead barrier breaking pellet, and helped these people get rid of the undead barrier breaking pellet, his attitude would definitely change. The divine king of primal chaos glanced at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Tell me, what are your conditions?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. So direct? According to the procedure, shouldn't they first be polite and ease the tension between the two sides? "I don't like to drag things out," the divine king of primal chaos said indifferently. "Is that so?" "That's right, this junior doesn't like it either." "Then this junior will be blunt. If I offend you in any way, I hope that senior divine king will be magnanimous enough to forgive me. First, the first condition. The Blood Ancestor and the Feather Emperor stole a secret technique from you back then. Although the Blood Ancestor and the Feather Emperor were indeed in the wrong, so many years have already passed. I sincerely hope that this matter can end here. Of course, we definitely won't return this secret technique. However, this junior can represent the Blood Ancestor and sincerely apologize to Senior Divine King." After saying this, Qin Feiyang got up and bowed deeply to the Divine King of Primal Chaos. The Divine King of Primal Chaos raised his eyebrows and said, "He himself is here. Why do you need to represent him? The Blood Ancestor is a senior, and I respect him greatly. I also know that he doesn't like to lower his head to others, so as a junior, I naturally don't want to see him do something he doesn't want to do." Qin Feiyang smiled. The Blood Ancestor was extremely moved by these words. Although they hadn't known each other for very long, Qin Feiyang's understanding of him had already far surpassed Li Feng's. The Divine King of Primal Chaos's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and even a hint of praise. It was rare to see someone like this who was willing to suffer for the sake of protecting the dignity of a senior. "Did you see that? I was right, wasn't I? There's nothing to say about his character." Snow Queen chuckled. "Humph." Demon King Feng Tian snorted from the side. The Divine King of Primal Chaos pondered for a moment before nodding. "Fine, I'll agree to your first condition. In any case, this secret technique doesn't mean much to me. The reason I gave the order to hunt you down was entirely because his and the Feather Emperor's thievery made me very uncomfortable. Most importantly, even after coming to the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, the Blood Ancestor didn't even say a word of apology." The Divine King of Primal Chaos added. Qin Feiyang shook his head and bitterly smiled. "There's nothing we can do about it. It's all because you're too strong. There's no chance of taking it by force. Now you're saying that it's our fault. The Divine King of Primal Chaos was amused by Qin Feiyang's words. Was he trying to change the logic? No. This junior was just speaking casually. I thought that with our strength, we could shake everything, but when we came to the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, we realized how naive and insignificant we were. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. There's always a taller mountain. This is the law of nature. We've all walked this path. Continue with your second condition. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled faintly. The second condition is that Li Feng and the 3 sovereign weapons suppressed by the Black Flame Demon King. I hope that Senior Divine King will release them now, Qin Feiyang said. No problem. The Divine King of Primal Chaos nodded and looked at the Black Flame Demon King. Let them out. Yes. The Black Flame Demon King nodded and waved his hand, causing the Black Flame Demon Castle to appear. Immediately after, a blood-red figure and 3 sovereign weapons appeared from the Black Flame Demon Castle and landed in the main hall. Qin Dage, Qin Feiyang, Li Feng, Lu Ding, the Golden Bell, and the Ancient Pagoda were overjoyed when they saw Qin Feiyang and the others. Come here. Qin Feiyang smiled. Li Feng and the 3 sovereign weapons immediately ran to Qin Feiyang's side. There were a lot of bloodstains on Li Feng's body, but there were no wounds. It was obvious that he had been injured in the past and had now recovered. The bodies of the 3 sovereign weapons of Green Cauldron were shattered. Obviously, in the process of being suppressed, they had suffered quite a bit of damage. Qin Dage, what's going on? Li Feng secretly asked. Can't you hear it in the Black Flame Demon Castle? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. When the Black Flame Demon King imprisoned us, he set up a soundproof barrier, so we couldn't hear anything all these years. Li Feng shook his head. So it's like that. Then we'll talk about it later. Retreat to the side first. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization, then looked at the 3 sovereign weapons of Green Cauldron and said apologetically, I'm sorry for making you suffer so much. Isn't it fine now? No need to blame yourself. The 3 sovereign weapons of Green Cauldron even comforted Qin Feiyang. If the 3 sovereign weapons of Green Cauldron could blame him, Qin Feiyang would feel better in his heart. But now, they comforted him instead, making him feel even more guilty. Are there any more conditions? The Primal Chaos Divine King asked. Qin Feiyang looked at the 3 sovereign weapons and transmitted. You guys also rest first. I'll have a good talk with her. Okay. The 3 sovereign weapons also retreated to the side. Qin Feiyang looked at the Primal Chaos Divine King and said with a smile, Of course there are more than these 2 conditions. Qin Feiyang, don't be too greedy. The old woman frowned. 2 conditions are not enough? How big is your appetite? The old poison muttered. She is the Myriad Poisons Demon King. So it's her. Qin Feiyang muttered, looked at the Myriad Poisons Demon King, and said with a smile, Senior, this junior has already talked about it before. You guys are so strong, and you can even command the undead and sovereign weapons of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. Of course, we can't not be on guard. In the end, isn't it to save our lives? The Black Flame Demon King sneered. I won't deny it. But there is one thing you can't deny. If it were you guys today, you would do the same. You might even be greedier than me. Qin Feiyang laughed. The Black Flame Demon King's face sank. They were really becoming more and more unscrupulous. The Primal Chaos Divine King said indifferently, Don't pay attention to them. Continue. The third condition. Senior Divine King, please take back the order to kill us and promise not to harm us while we are away from the Sky Bell Divine Treasury. Also, not only does Senior Divine King have to make this promise, but the other sovereign weapons of Senior also have to make this promise. One last point. None of you are allowed to incite the spirits and sovereign weapons of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury to join forces against us. Qin Feiyang looked at the Demon Kings and smiled faintly. Everything had to be considered. If it was just the Primal Chaos Divine King making this promise, it wouldn't be meaningful at all. This was because the Demon Kings and the sovereign weapons of the Primal Chaos Royal City could still kill them. At that time, Even if he wasn't convinced, he could find the Divine King of Primal Chaos to reason with him. The Divine King of Primal Chaos could confidently tell him that she didn't do anything. What did the Demon Kings and Sovereign Weapons have to do with her? Also, the spirits and sovereign weapons of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury couldn't be ignored. Although these spirits and sovereign weapons weren't as strong as the Divine King of Primal Chaos and the other Demon Kings, they had the advantage in numbers. If they joined forces against them under the orders of the Divine King of Primal Chaos and the other Demon Kings, only death would await them. At that time, he would have no choice but to suffer in silence. The Primal Chaos Divine King of Primal Chaos remained unmoved by this condition, but the Black Flame Demon King, Bloodthirsty Demon King, and Heaven Reverence Demon King couldn't help but frown. They were still thinking of eliminating this person after this matter was over. But they hadn't expected this person to be so smart as to propose such a condition in advance. Wasn't this the same as cutting off their killing intent? The Blood Ancestor, Azure Dragon, and the other Demon Kings all had looks of admiration. As expected of Qin Feiyang, he had even considered such details. If it were anyone else facing experts like the Divine King of Primal Chaos, the first thing they would think of would be to obtain more divine items from them. This was because the Divine King of Primal Chaos and the others were bound to have many powerful divine items on them, any one of which could be used for the rest of their lives. But Qin Feiyang didn't. His first consideration was everyone's safety. This was the choice of a smart person. If one's life couldn't be guaranteed, then what was the point of obtaining these divine items? End of this chapter. Chapter 3796. The hall fell silent again. Li Feng and the three sovereign divine weapons were filled with doubts. What was going on? Qin Feiyang actually dared to negotiate with the Divine King of Primal Chaos and the other Demon Kings so unscrupulously? The key was facing Qin Feiyang's attitude. The Divine King of Primal Chaos and the other Demon Kings were not angry? It was simply too abnormal. Could it be that Qin Feiyang had something on them? But one had to know. The entire Sky Bell Divine Treasure was under the rule of the Divine King of Primal Chaos. After a long time, the Divine King of Primal Chaos finally reacted. He lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Your plan is not bad. It's purely for self-protection." Qin Feiyang smiled. "You're not just thinking about self-protection. If I agree to your condition, it means that all the undead and sovereign divine weapons in the entire Sky Bell Divine Treasure can't hurt you. If they can't hurt you, doesn't that mean you can do whatever you want in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure?" A cold light flashed in the eyes of the Divine King of Primal Chaos. "Senior Divine King's words are too serious. Do you think I'm the kind of person who can do whatever I want?" Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. "I think so. You dare to be so arrogant in front of us, let alone those undead and sovereign divine weapons. If we really agree to your condition, then the Blood Ancestor can slaughter them and devour their undead souls. You can also look for sovereign divine weapons everywhere and subdue them for your use. You can also plunder the law miniatures, and even the inheritance of the ultimate profound. Because they don't dare to fight back. It means that the entire Sky Bell Divine Treasure will be your slaughterhouse in the future. What a wild ambition." Bloodthirsty Demon King, Black Flame Demon King, and Feng Tian Demon King all sneered. "Slaughterhouse." Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a wry smile, "I've never thought about such a thing." "Stop pretending. What is your purpose in coming to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? Isn't it just for the Sovereign's divine weapon, the law miniature, and the inheritance of the ultimate profound? You want to use us to achieve your ambitions? Dream on." Feng Tian Demon King sneered. How could such a small trick escape their sharp eyes? What a joke. Qin Feiyang had no way to defend himself. Indeed, he had never thought of it that way. It was purely for self-preservation. Who would have thought that the Demon Kings would be so imaginative? "Be quiet." The Divine King of Primal Chaos spoke and all the Demon Kings fell silent. Qin Feiyang also looked up at the Divine King of Primal Chaos. This woman was still the one who could make the decisions. The Demon Kings could only brag. "It's not impossible for me to agree to your condition." At that time, I can even personally send you out of the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury and guarantee your safety. The Divine King of Primal Chaos looked at Qin Feiyang and said indifferently, "Then what are your conditions?" Qin Feiyang asked. There was no such thing as a free lunch in the world, let alone a free lunch. There had to be a condition for such a good thing. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said, "From now on, you will stay in the Primal Chaos Royal City and not go anywhere until the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury is over." What? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. Wasn't this the same as restricting their freedom? They still wanted to find more law miniature and sovereign's divine weapons, so that they would have a greater chance of resisting the Divine Kingdom. The Blood Ancestor naturally didn't need to be mentioned. He still wanted to devour the souls of the dead and raise his law of time to the ultimate profound level. If his freedom was restricted, all of this would be empty talk. But if they didn't agree, the Divine King of Primal Chaos would definitely not agree to their conditions. At that time, they would have no way to survive. You have already obtained enough in the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury. Don't be greedy. Moreover, even without the undead barrier-breaking pill, I wouldn't have allowed you to continue plundering. Do you know the real reason why I gave the order to hunt you down? The Blood Ancestor stealing the secret technique is only secondary. The more important reason is that if I let you continue plundering, it will definitely affect the foundation of the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury. In short, as the ruler of the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury, everything in the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury is my personal property. If it were you, would you allow someone to plunder your property like this? The Divine King of Primal Chaos said indifferently. Property? Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. She actually said that everything in the Heaven Bell Divine Treasury was her personal property? These words were too unreasonable. Everything in the world was created by heaven and earth. Why should it belong to her? However, even if it was unreasonable, they couldn't refute it, because the Divine King of Primal Chaos strength was right in front of them. As the ruler of this place, she could do whatever she wanted. Not to mention outsiders like them. Even the dead and sovereign's divine weapons here wouldn't dare to have any objections. Think about it carefully. Of course, if you agree, I won't mistreat you. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said indifferently. You won't mistreat us? Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Could it be that she was going to give them some kind of supreme treasure? If that was the case, they could stay in the royal city of Primal Chaos. They wouldn't have to worry about their lives being threatened, and they could also obtain supreme treasures to improve their strength. This was a good thing that fell from the sky. For us, the undead barrier-breaking pill is a fortune, but for you, what I can give you is also a fortune. But it's up to you how to choose. After the Divine King of Primal Chaos finished speaking, she went silent and waited for Qin Feiyang and the others' reply. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The Divine King of Primal Chaos' attitude was quite firm. If you don't agree, I won't agree either. Let's see who's afraid of who. Beauty, can you tell us in advance what treasure you're going to give us? The mad scientist rolled his eyes and stared at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and chuckled. Everyone was stunned. Beauty? And that smiling face that deserved a beating. Was this guy flirting with the Divine King of Primal Chaos? His guts were way too big. Can't I call him that? The mad scientist looked at everyone suspiciously. Of course not. All the Demon Kings rolled their eyes. For someone as important as the Divine King of Primal Chaos, you could either call him Lord or Senior. Although the word beauty was a recognition of beauty, when used on the Divine King of Primal Chaos, it was a little frivolous. So troublesome. The mad scientist pursed his lips and bared his teeth. Beautiful Divine King of Primal Chaos, can you tell us what you're going to give us? There's no problem with this title, right? The Divine King of Primal Chaos's mouth twitched. What a glib little thing. He shook his head and said, No, if I say it now, it won't be able to test your determination. That's not fair. We've already told you about the undead barrier-breaking pill. You should at least reveal a little. The mad scientist wasn't convinced. There's no such thing as fairness in this world. If you want to obtain a creation, you have to fight for it yourself. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled faintly. The mad scientist had a helpless expression. He had asked for nothing. However, the divine king of primal chaos had mentioned a creation several times. It had to be something incredible. The mad scientist turned to Qin Feiyang and chuckled. Old Qin, why don't we just submit to her? Bastard, don't go overboard. Demon King Feng Tian suddenly stood up and glared at the mad scientist. Submit to her? Was this something that could be said so casually? Those who didn't know would think that the divine king of primal chaos was forcing them to give themselves up. This was clearly the divine king of primal chaos. It's none of your business. You didn't like us when we chatted with the Ice Queen. Now that we're chatting with the divine king of primal chaos, you don't like us anymore. If you have nothing to do after eating, then go out and pick up dung. Don't just stay here and show your presence. The mad scientist raised his eyebrows and scolded without holding back. Bastard! You're too arrogant. Demon King Feng Tian was furious. For someone like you, I feel that it's a waste of time to say another word to you. So, please shut your stinky mouth and don't talk shit everywhere. Madman snorted coldly and looked away, revealing a disdainful expression. Demon King Feng Tian was so angry that his body trembled. He looked at the divine king of primal chaos and roared. Lord Divine King, look, what kind of attitude is that? He doesn't care about you at all. The mad scientist turned to Demon King Feng Tian and said, I really don't want to talk nonsense with you, but there's nothing I can do about it. You're just asking for a scolding. It's always been you shouting here, and now you're making a fuss? Dear Lord Demon King, may I ask if you're a dog? The killing intent in Demon King Feng Tian's heart was uncontrollable. Qin Feiyang glanced at Demon King Feng Tian and decisively made a decision. He looked at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and said with a smile, Senior Divine King, I agree to your conditions. He had no choice but to agree. With Demon King Feng Tian's killing intent, he would definitely kill them in the future. If it was just Demon King Feng Tian, he wouldn't care, but there was still Demon King Feng Tian and Demon King Feng Tian. He also felt a strong killing intent in the hearts of these two demon kings. As for Ice Queen and the others, although they didn't feel any killing intent, if they really fell out in the future, they would definitely stand with Theta Wang and the others without hesitation. Very good. You've made a very wise decision. Then it's a deal. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled. It's useless to talk. We have to swear an oath as proof. Qin Feiyang said. Swear an oath. The Divine King of Primal Chaos was stunned. That's right. I trust you. But I really can't trust some demon kings. Therefore we have to swear a blood oath. Qin Feiyang said. Blood oath? The Divine King of Primal Chaos was suspicious. This is a kind of oath that will be fulfilled. Once a blood oath is violated, even a sovereign divine weapon will be destroyed by the wrath of heaven. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled in astonishment. There's actually such an oath in this world? Interesting. Lord Divine King. Think thrice. This might be a trap. Demon King Feng Tian hurriedly shouted. Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. If it's really a trap, I won't be so stupid as to swear a blood oath myself. The mocking smile on Qin Feiyang's face was undisguised. You! Demon King Feng Tian was mad with hatred. As a demon king of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he was provoked by two juniors time and time again. It was simply a great humiliation. Chapter 3797. Qin Feiyang sighed. I didn't mean to target you, but you are too tactless. In the end, I want to say something. Remember your identity. You are the demon king of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Don't tarnish your own face. Anyone with a brain could understand the meaning of these words. A big shot should have the demeanor of a big shot. Don't be like a clown, it was very ugly. Demon King Feng Tian stared at Qin Feiyang coldly, his hands tightly clenched together. But in the end, unexpectedly, Demon King Feng Tian didn't flare up. He returned to his chair without saying a word and lowered his head, making others unable to see his expression. Who knew what he was thinking? Qin Feiyang didn't care. In any case, as long as these people swore a blood oath, No matter how much they hated him, they wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Unless the other party really didn't want to live. But he had never seen someone who didn't want to live. Moreover, if Demon King Feng Tian really didn't want to live, he wouldn't care so much about the undead barrier-breaking pill. Qin Feiyang looked up at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and said with a faint smile, "Senior Divine King, if you don't have any objections, then let's begin." The Divine King of Primal Chaos didn't immediately reply. He looked at Snow Queen and the others and asked, "What do you think?" "As long as I can get rid of my undead body, I have no objections." Snow Queen took the lead and smiled at Qin Feiyang and the others. "I also have no objections." Myriad Poison's Demon King also expressed his opinion. The remaining Demon Kings looked at each other and nodded. In the end, only Bloodthirsty Demon King, Black Flame Demon King, and Demon King Feng Tian were left. "What? Do you have any objections?" The Divine King of Primal Chaos looked at the three and asked. Black Flame Demon King glanced at Qin Feiyang and the others, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He looked up at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and said with a smile, "If Lord Divine King doesn't have any objections, how can we dare?" "Listening to what you said, it seems you are forcing yourself?" "Actually, you don't have to force yourself. As long as you are happy, even if you have an undead body." Madman looked at Black Flame Demon King and laughed. The Black Flame Demon King raised his eyebrows. Was there no end to it? After scolding Demon King Feng Tian, she came to target him? "All of you calm down," the Divine King of Chaos said as he looked coldly at the Mad Lord and the Black Flame Demon King. Madman pursed his lips and fell silent. The Black Flame Demon King also lowered his head, not daring to utter another word. This was because everyone knew that they could offend anyone, but the Divine King of Primal Chaos. It seems that no one has any objections. The Divine King of Primal Chaos glanced at the 9 Demon Kings before looking at Qin Feiyang with a faint smile. "Tell me, how do you want me to make a blood oath?" "It's simple. You and the other Demon Kings, use your blood essence as a guide. As for the Sovereign's weapons, they are guided by their weapon spirits," Qin Feiyang briefly explained. "I see." The Divine King of Chaos smiled. After all, they were all powerful and knowledgeable people. They only needed to ponder a little to understand. "Then let's begin," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "All right." The Divine King of Primal Chaos nodded and looked at the 9 Demon Kings. "Let your sovereign's weapons come out." The 9 Demon Kings waved their hands, and their respective sovereigns' weapons appeared. Swords, spears, sticks, everything. Following that, everyone made a blood oath one after another. One after another, the oath seals descended and merged into everyone's body. Looking at the oath seals descending from the sky, even the Divine King of Primal Chaos couldn't help but be amazed. Will this thing really come true? The Myriad Poison's Demon King frowned. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile, "If you don't believe me, you can try it." The Myriad Poison's Demon King was slightly taken aback before smiling embarrassedly. "Then forget it." The Bloodthirsty Demon King looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a gloomy expression, "The blood oath has been made. Can you give us the undead barrier-breaking pill?" "And one last thing," Qin Feiyang said with some hesitation. "Are you done?" The Bloodthirsty Demon King was furious. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Bloodthirsty Demon King, then looked up at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and said, "Senior, I originally didn't want to talk about this." Before Qin Feiyang could finish, the Divine King of Primal Chaos waved his hand and said, "Then don't talk about it." Qin Feiyang was stunned for a moment before he smiled bitterly and said, "I think it's better to confess and be more lenient. Otherwise, when you find out in the future, even if you don't dare to kill me because of the blood oath, you will definitely hate me in your heart." "Is it that serious?" The Divine King of Primal Chaos was surprised. Ahem. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly, looked at the Demon Kings, and said, "We have already killed the Queen of Flames." "What?" Hearing this, the Demon Kings immediately stood up and looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. The Divine King of Primal Chaos's eyes also flashed with a cold light. The Blood Ancestor secretly said angrily, "Qin Feiyang, what are you doing? Why did you tell them such a big thing?" I thought about it for a long time before making this decision. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Why? The blood ancestor asked. Although I have just met the divine king of primal chaos, from the previous conversation, this person is actually not that unreasonable. What she wants to see is a person's sincerity. It doesn't matter if you do something wrong. What matters is deceit. Take the matter of you guys stealing the secret technique, for example. Previously, she said that if you were to apologize to her in person after entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, she might not really kill you. Qin Feiyang secretly explained. But, the blood ancestor raised his eyebrows. Frenzy transmitted his voice. What are you afraid of? The blood oath has already been made. Even if they want to kill us, they won't dare to do it. Just sit still. You two really like to mess around. The blood ancestor glared at the two of them, then raised his head to look at the divine king of primal chaos, feeling extremely nervous. Li Zhongxing and the others were also very nervous. Then they looked at the divine king of primal chaos. At this moment, she lowered her head and stared at Qin Feiyang without saying a word. The 9 great demon kings were also looking at Qin Feiyang. They were all silent, but their expressions were all different. Some were shocked, some had gloomy expressions, and some had extremely complicated expressions. Who would have thought that the Queen of Flames, one of the 10 demon kings, would die in the hands of these people? The hall fell into deathly silence once more. The atmosphere was heavy. After an unknown period of time, the divine king of primal chaos took a deep breath, and the cold light in his eyes faded. He finally broke the silence and looked at Qin Feiyang. You are quite honest. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Let's not talk about the past. After all, we were enemies in the past. It was either you kill me or I kill you. If the Queen of Flames died in your hands, then she can only blame herself for being inferior. The divine king of primal chaos said indifferently. Hearing this, the blood ancestor and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, senior. Qin Feiyang smiled gratefully. The divine king of primal chaos said. Now there shouldn't be any other conditions, right? If I say there is, these demon kings will definitely get angry again. Qin Feiyang glanced at Theta Wang and the others, then looked at the divine king of primal chaos and said, refining the undead bottleneck breaking pill requires the extreme yang thunder fire, but I only have 1 extreme yang thunder fire on me, so I can only refine 1 undead bottleneck breaking pill. Extreme yang thunder fire? The divine king of primal chaos and the 9 demon kings were stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the 10 of them. I have all the other ingredients except for the extreme yang thunder fire. You will have to deal with this matter yourselves. You have ready-made extreme yang thunder fire? The divine king of primal chaos asked. No. The 9 demon kings shook their heads. This thing was of no value to them at all. It would take up too much space in their interspatial rings. The divine king of primal chaos pondered for a while, and said with a faint smile. Then refine 1 for me first. Let them find the other extreme yang thunder fire themselves. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and glanced at the hall. He then turned to look outside and said with a smile, then let's go outside. There was a large square outside the hall. They could come out of the castle and stay in the square. Okay. The divine king of primal chaos got up and walked out of the hall. The 9 demon kings followed closely behind. Obviously, they wanted to see Qin Feiyang refine the pill with their own eyes. Looking at the backs of the 10 demon kings, Li Zhongxing patted his chest and said with lingering fear, you really scared me to death just now. Look at how brave you are. Qiao Shui shook her head. Li Zhongxing immediately said with dissatisfaction, Sister Shui, that's too much. I just saw that you were sweating on your forehead. Do you dare say that it wasn't because you were nervous? Was it? Don't talk nonsense. Qiao Shui glared at him. Okay. I was just talking nonsense. Li Zhongxing shook his head helplessly. Women were truly hard to fathom. Qin Feiyang. No, Grand Immortal Qin, don't forget about me. The old poisonous beast looked at Qin Feiyang with a face full of desire and smiled obsequiously. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Grand Immortal? Why don't you say exalted immortal? Don't worry, I won't forget about you, Qin Feiyang said indifferently. Then he quickly walked out of the main hall and entered the square. The Blood Ancestor and the others came out and stood not far away from the 10 Demon Kings of Primal Chaos Divine King. The castle, Qin Feiyang thought. Clang. The castle immediately appeared and expanded. Finally, it landed on the square with a boom and the door opened. Qin Feiyang walked into the castle. The Divine King of Primal Chaos and the 9 Demon Kings also walked toward the castle. Qin Feiyang noticed this and turned to the 10 of them with a smile. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be disturbed when refining this kind of pill, so please wait outside for a while. The Black Flame Demon King raised his eyebrows. It was ridiculous to say that he didn't want to be disturbed. He obviously didn't want them to watch. Okay. The Divine King of Primal Chaos nodded and didn't force him. Qin Feiyang smiled gratefully and turned to enter the cultivation room. He took out the Extreme Yang Thunderfire, Yin Yang Wood, and Death Fruit. Feiyang, although you've thought about it thoroughly this time, you still miss something. Just as Qin Feiyang was about to open the furnace, the voice of the castle suddenly sounded in his mind. Miss something? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Really? The castle said. The White-Eyed Wolf, the Fire Qilin Tan Wu, the Infernal Divine Hound Princess Huofeng, the Sea Lion King of the Heavenly Clouds Ocean, and the Masked Shura of the Land of Buried Gods. Them. Didn't I include them when I proposed this condition? Qin Feiyang said. Although that's what you thought, you didn't say it. You know about the blood oath. It only works when you're swearing an oath. In other words, even if the Black Flame Demon King and the others go and kill the White-Eyed Wolf, they won't be breaking the blood oath, the castle said. Chapter 3798. Then what should we do? Qin Feiyang frowned. Before giving the Chaos Divine King the pill, you should replenish yourself. I believe that when she sees the undead barrier-breaking pill, she won't make things difficult for you. The castle thought for a while and said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Fortunately, the castle reminded him. Otherwise, the Black Flame Demon King and the others might really take advantage of this loophole, because the Black Flame Demon King had seen Princess Huofeng with his own eyes. And at that time, Princess Huofeng helped him with all her strength to fight against the Black Flame Demon King. Anyone with a brain would be able to tell that their relationship was not ordinary. And now, Princess Huofeng was not by his side. The Black Flame Demon King would definitely think that the two of them had separated. One had to know. With the strength of these Demon Kings, finding the whereabouts of Princess Huofeng was a piece of cake. Maybe even. The Black Flame Demon King, Bloodthirsty Demon King, and Feng Tian Demon King were secretly planning this. Once they got rid of their undead bodies, they would search for Princess Huofeng's whereabouts. When they found Princess Huofeng, the White-Eyed Wolf would naturally be in danger, because the two of them were together. At that time, in the face of the 3 Demon Kings, even if the White-Eyed Wolf and Princess Huofeng had more than a dozen sovereign divine weapons, they would be powerless. Sure enough, it's too difficult to be flawless. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Especially in such a chaotic and tense situation, no matter how thoughtful one was, there would still be places to fool. About 100 breaths passed. Under the anticipation of the Chaos Divine King, Qin Feiyang finally walked out of the castle. In front of him, an undead barrier-breaking pill was floating. The Chaos Divine King's eyes lit up and immediately prepared to go forward to take it. But at this time, Qin Feiyang grabbed the undead barrier-breaking pill first and glanced at the Black Flame Demon Theta Wang. What do you mean? The Divine King of Primal Chaos frowned. Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and lowered his head to look at the undead spirit barrier-breaking pill in his hand. He looked at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and smiled. Senior Divine King, I still have some friends who are currently training in the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasure. Therefore, I have to add another condition. I'm not allowed to harm your friends? The Primal Chaos Divine King asked. Yes. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the White-Eyed Wolf, Princess Huofeng Tan Wu, the Infernal Divine Hound, and the Fire Qilin appeared. When the shadows of the White-Eyed Wolf and the other 4 were formed, Qin Feiyang glanced at the Black Flame Devil King, paying attention to the changes in his expression. He realized. When the Black Flame Demon King saw the phantoms of the White-Eyed Wolf, Tan Wu, the Infernal Divine Hound, and the Fire Qilin, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. He seemed to be very surprised that Qin Feiyang had so many friends. But when he saw the phantoms of the Princess Huafeng, the Black Flame Demon King couldn't help but frown slightly, as if there was a trace of anger. Seeing this change in expression, Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. The Black Flame Demon King was indeed planning to kill Princess Huafeng. Moreover, he really felt a trace of killing intent in the hearts of the Black Flame Demon King, the Bloodthirsty Demon King, and the Reverence Demon King. Obviously, when they were in the main hall, the Black Flame Demon King was already secretly scheming. Because the Bloodthirsty Demon King and the Reverence Demon King didn't see Princess Huafeng, the Black Flame Demon King must have secretly told them. Qin Feiyang finally understood why the Reverence Demon King didn't flare up in the face of the lunatic's clamor. He directly returned to his chair, lowered his head, and concealed the expression on his face. At that time, the Black Flame Demon King must have secretly told the Reverence Demon King to calm down and discuss a way to deal with them. What a despicable heart! A trace of killing intent flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. He then looked at the Azure Dragon and Yun Xiang, ready to let the two of them condense the shadows of the others in the land of buried gods. But when the words were about to come out of his mouth, he swallowed them back and his eyes flickered. What's wrong? The castle's suspicious voice rang in Qin Feiyang's mind. I have a bold guess. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. What guess? The castle was puzzled. Let's talk about it later. Qin Feiyang secretly responded. He looked at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and said with a smile, Senior Divine King, this request isn't too much, right? As you wish. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled faintly and nodded without hesitation. He then looked at the 9 Demon Kings and said, Quickly make a blood oath. After that, the Divine King of Primal Chaos was the first to make a blood oath to not harm the White-Eyed Wolf and the others. Just as the castle expected, even the Divine King of Primal Chaos couldn't remain calm in the face of the undead barrier-breaking pill in front of him. Seeing the Divine King of Primal Chaos make a blood oath so quickly, Snow White Queen and the others naturally didn't dare to delay. They took out their respective divine weapons and made a blood oath. What should we do? The Bloodthirsty Demon King glanced at the Black Flame Demon King and the Sky Demon King and asked. This is the Divine King's order. What else can we do? Hurry up. Don't let Qin Feiyang see anything. The Black Flame Demon King said angrily. He also took out the Black Flame Demon Castle and quickly made a blood oath. Why are they so smart? They can think of everything in advance. The Sky Demon King and the Bloodthirsty Demon King were also very annoyed. But with so many eyes watching, especially the Divine King of Primal Chaos, even if they didn't want to, what could they do? Moreover, to get rid of the undead body, they still had to rely on Qin Feiyang. Therefore, the two could only helplessly take out their respective divine weapons and make a blood oath. And because the Demon Kings had made a blood oath, they couldn't personally harm Qin Feiyang and the others, or instigate the undead and divine weapons of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure to harm Qin Feiyang and the others. So even if they wanted to kill now, it wouldn't be considered a violation of the oath. After all, they didn't really make a move. Seeing the various Demon Kings swearing blood oaths again, Qin Feiyang revealed a smile on his face. He offered the undead spirit barrier-breaking pellet to the Primal Chaos God King with both hands. Finally, this loophole was fixed. As for Long Chun, Qi Shaoyan, and the white-bearded old man, they could only pray for themselves. Moreover, these people left their divine souls outside. Even if they died, it wouldn't matter much. However, if his guess was correct, then perhaps the three of them would obtain a huge stroke of good fortune. Of course, to Long Chun, this kind of fortune might not even enter his eyes. After all, he had a powerful father. Moreover, Long Chun's divine weapon was not ordinary. Black Flame Devil Theta Wang might not be able to kill him. After receiving the undead barrier-breaking pill, the Divine King of Primal Chaos revealed a trace of joy in his eyes. Primal Chaos Royal City, protect me. As his voice fell, the Divine King of Primal Chaos immediately consumed the undead barrier-breaking pill. Meet. Qin Feiyang hurriedly put away the ancient castle and retreated out of the square with the Blood Ancestor and the others. The 9 demon kings looked at each other and quickly left the square. This was because they had already seen the power of the heavenly tribulation when Xiao Shui was undergoing her tribulation. With their methods, they couldn't resist it. After a few breaths, the Divine King of Primal Chaos body trembled slightly, and a trace of pain crept into his eyes. Obviously, the undead barrier-breaking pill's effect had already spread in his body. However, as the ruler of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, he naturally couldn't let others see his miserable side. So no matter how painful it was, he endured it. Boom. Kacha. Soon, the heavenly tribulation descended. Blood-colored lightning roared in all directions, emitting an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Azure Dragon looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky and suddenly thought of something. He transmitted his voice to Qin Feiyang and the others. Wait a moment. Qin Feiyang and the others turned to look at Azure Dragon suspiciously. Azure Dragon frowned and pondered for a moment before looking at Qin Feiyang and asking, "Do you want to add another condition?" "What condition?" Qin Feiyang asked. The mad scientist and the others were also puzzled. Azure Dragon transmitted his voice. "Don't we have a lot of people in the land of buried gods and the heavenly cloud ocean? What if these demon kings want to kill them?" "So it's this." Qin Feiyang suddenly smiled and said to himself, "The ancient castle had already reminded me of this." "Already reminded you?" Azure Dragon was stunned and asked in confusion. "Then why didn't you mention them just now?" "At that time, when I looked at you and Yun Xiang, I was prepared to mention this matter, but suddenly, I had a bold guess." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. "What guess?" Azure Dragon was puzzled. The mad scientist said in disdain, "Do you still need to say it? They must be up to something again." "This time I won't deny it." Qin Feiyang secretly smiled. So straightforward. The mad scientist was stunned and immediately became interested. He transmitted his voice. "Hurry up and say it." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice with a smile. "Actually, for the god beasts and sea beasts of the land of buried gods and the heavenly cloud ocean, this might be a good fortune." "Good fortune?" The mad scientist and the others looked at each other. Being targeted by the demon kings was a good fortune? Was there something wrong with his brain? Think about it. Even if the demon kings want to make a move, they will make a move on our companions. Only then will they make us suffer. But they don't know the relationship between Sea Lion King and us. Previously, I didn't mention Sea Lion King and the others. That's the problem. The people I didn't mention, the demon kings, will definitely think that they have nothing to do with us and might even be our enemies. Isn't that the saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Daifuku was surprised. "You mean they will find Sea Lion King and the others to deal with us?" "I'm not sure. However, this is my guess. Because of the blood oath, the demon kings don't dare to make a move on us, but they hate us so much, especially Bloodthirsty Demon King, Feng Tian Demon King, and Black Flame Demon King. I have observed carefully before, and they indeed have the intention to kill White-Eyed Wolf and the others." Qin Feiyang glanced at Theta Wang and the others not far away, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "They really don't know life from death. I will deal with them sooner or later." Madman snorted inwardly when he heard this. "Dealing with them will be the next time we enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. I don't know if we'll be able to enter again next time." Qin Feiyang smiled inwardly. The blood oath he swore was different from the Primal Chaos God King and the other demon kings. The Primal Chaos God King and the other demon kings swore not to harm them, but he swore to stay in the Primal Chaos Royal City until the Sky Bell Divine Treasury ended. In other words, Qin Feiyang and the others could kill the demon kings. But with the current strength of Qin Feiyang and the others, it was impossible for them to do so. Therefore, they could only come to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure next time. But next time, they might not be able to enter, because there was a limit to entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Those who grasped the ultimate profoundness of the strongest laws couldn't enter. And these people, even Daifuku, would probably have grasped the ultimate profoundness of the strongest laws by the next time the Sky Bell Divine Treasure opened. Not to mention Qin Feiyang and the madman. If they hadn't grasped the ultimate profoundness of the strongest laws by that time, they might as well kill themselves. So what is your guess? Yin Ziang frowned, unable to figure it out. Chapter 3799. You still don't understand? Qin Feiyang looked at Yin Ziang in astonishment. Yin Ziang shook his head. Your reaction is even slower than Brother Wolf's. Madman looked at him in disdain. You already understand? Yin Ziang frowned. Nonsense. Who am I? Madman smiled proudly, but then everyone was taken aback. He turned to Qin Feiyang and asked, What do you mean? Yin Ziang couldn't help but roll his eyes. He thought he really understood. It turned out that he was just pretending to understand. Qin Feiyang was helpless and explained in detail. The Demon Kings want to kill us, but they can't do it themselves. So what will they do? Ask Longchen for help? Madman asked. Yes. Not only can they not do it themselves, but the spirits and sovereign weapons of the Sky Bell Divine Treasure also can't instigate them, so they can only ask Longchen for help. Otherwise, when we leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, they will have no chance at all. If they ask someone like Longchen for help, the 3 Demon Kings will definitely give them some benefits. On one hand, it will be intense, and on the other hand, it will increase their strength. This is what I mean by fortune, Qin Feiyang secretly said. So that's how it is. Everyone suddenly understood. The divine beasts of the land of buried gods, and the sea beasts of the sky cloud ocean, all have many sovereign weapons. It is very likely that they will become the target of the 3 Demon Kings. At that time, when the 3 Demon Kings find them and give them some divine items, isn't it the same as using the 3 Demon Kings to strengthen our strength? Qin Feiyang secretly smiled. Madman's eyes lit up as he chuckled. They thought they could get rid of us with the help of Sea Lion Emperor and the others, but in the end, they were used by us. When we leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, and let them know the truth, I'm afraid they will be furious. Not only will they be furious, they will probably go crazy. Yin Ziang also laughed sinisterly. Azure Dragon looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Now it was indeed the stage for these young people. Daifuku transmitted his voice. Then shouldn't we inform the Master Jura and Sea Lion about this in advance? Of course. After all, they don't know what's going on. If we don't tell them in advance, our relationship will definitely be exposed. Qin Feiyang nodded. How? Daifuku was suspicious. That's easy. Contact the Fire Phoenix Sword and the others. Tell the White-Eyed Wolf and Princess Huofeng to go to the land of buried gods, and the Heavenly Cloud Sea immediately. Qin Feiyang said. Although the Sea Lion Emperor of the land of the buried gods and the Heavenly Clouds Ocean were very united, and there was definitely a contract between the ruler armaments, Qin Feiyang, and the others didn't have the ruler armaments of the land of the buried gods and the Heavenly Clouds Ocean. Naturally, they couldn't directly contact the ruler armaments of the 2 powers. Therefore, they could only ask the White-Eyed Wolf and Princess Huofeng to make a trip there. As for the ruler armaments of Qin Feiyang, the White-Eyed Wolf and Princess Huofeng, they had already established a contract between them, so no matter where they were, they could secretly contact each other. Then, should we inform Longchen, Qi Xiaoyan, and the white-bearded old man as well? Because they all know about our relationship with the land of the buried gods and the Heavenly Clouds Ocean. Madman secretly asked. Yes, we should ask them to cooperate. Qin Feiyang nodded. Is it difficult to get them to cooperate with us? Yin Ziang was somewhat worried. It's not difficult. The relationship between Longchen and us is very complicated. Although we have always been enemies, we have a good impression of each other. Moreover, when he released the dragon's ruler armaments, he also promised me that he would agree to one of my requests in the future. As for Qi Xiaoyan and the white-bearded old man, putting aside the grudge between us and the Qilin race, we also have a good impression of each other. Moreover, this matter is beneficial to them as well. Moreover, we have saved their lives. I believe that Qi Shaoyan is not a person who will repay kindness with evil. Qin Feiyang said inwardly. Fine, I believe in your judgment. It's easy to contact Qi Shaoyan and the White-Eyed Wolf. After all, the ruler armaments have already established a contract between them. But how are we supposed to contact Long Chen? Yin Xiang asked doubtfully. There's no need to worry about that. Long before we met, Gu Castle had already established a contract with Long Chen's ruler armaments. It's so that we can contact each other more easily in the future. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Yin Xiang shook his head and smiled helplessly. So it's already been arranged. Gu Castle and the Sword of the Grim Reaper, help me contact them. They can tell the White-Eyed Wolf our current situation in detail. But it's best to hold back on Long Chen and Qi Shaoyan. Just get them to cooperate with us. Also tell Tan Wu, the Hellhound, and the Fire Qilin to be careful as well. Qin Feiyang said inwardly. Okay. Gu Castle and the Sword of the Grim Reaper answered before contacting the Fire Phoenix Sword, Lightning God's Hammer, Divine Qilin Sword, and Long Chen's ruler armaments. In the sky, tribulation clouds roiled as blood lightning roared. Crack. Tribulation after tribulation rained down, but the primal chaos divine king, who was standing on the plaza, was completely unharmed. That was because all the tribulation had been blocked by the primal chaos royal city. The might of the primal chaos royal city was many times stronger than the flame magic sword and the black flame castle. Seeing this scene, Qin Feiyang and the others couldn't help but be alarmed. Fortunately, they did not choose to become enemies with the divine king. Otherwise, the primal chaos royal city alone would be enough to kill them instantly. At the same time, in the sky above a battlefield, a young man in white stood in the sky with a 3-foot-long sword in his hand. The mountains below were in ruins. Several corpses lay on the ground, staining the ground red. These corpses were undead that had formed flesh and blood. Obviously, there had been a battle here before. But even after a battle, the young man in white was not stained with blood. His white robe was still spotless. He looked at the corpses below with a calm expression. It was as if killing these undead spirits was just an easy task. This young man was Long Chen. The sword in his hand was about 3 fingers wide. The left side of the sword was milky white and emitted a holy aura. The right side was snowy white and emitted a bone-piercing chill. On the 2 sides of the sword hilt, there was an ice dragon and a holy dragon respectively. That's right. This was Long Chen's divine weapon. So boring. All of them are so weak. Long Chen shook his head and sighed. He landed in front of the corpses and took their Qiankuan rings. After checking for a while, he said with a smile, "There are more than a dozen edicts." It was as if these edicts were not very attractive to him. "It's because I'm too strong," the divine weapon in his hand said proudly. "Yes. With you around, even if we encounter the divine king, we might still be able to fight him. But I'm curious to know what level the divine king's divine weapon, the primal chaos royal city is." Long Chen was curious. "What's so difficult about that? We can just kill our way to the primal chaos royal city." The sword smiled coldly. "We can't be too ostentatious, lest we attract unnecessary trouble. I just want to quietly find edicts for the dragons and subdue a few more divine weapons. That's all. Let's continue." Long Chen smiled faintly. He put away the Qiankuan rings and was about to leave. Wait. But at this moment, the sword suddenly spoke. "What's wrong?" Long Chen looked down at the sword suspiciously. The sword said, "The castle contacted me." "The castle?" Long Chen was slightly stunned and asked, "Is it the castle beside Qin Feiyang?" "That's right. Wait for a while. I'll talk to it and see what it wants." After the sword said that, it went silent. Long Chen waited quietly. After a while, the sword finally reacted. "What's wrong?" Long Chen was suspicious. The sword said, "The castle asked me to tell you that the Black Flame Demon King, Bloodthirsty Demon King, and Feng Tian Demon King of the 10 Great Demon Kings may be looking for you." "Looking for me?" Long Chen was stunned and puzzled. "Why are they looking for me?" The castle didn't say. It only vaguely revealed that Qin Feiyang offended the 3 Great Demon Kings. The 3 great demon kings may come to you to help deal with Qin Feiyang and Qin Feiyang's companions. The sword said. Looking for me for help. Long Chen was flabbergasted. Although he had never seen the 10 great demon kings, he had heard of their fierce names. Each of them was extremely powerful, and there was an even more powerful chaotic divine king behind them. Why would they need his help? Also, he asked you to cooperate and not reveal their relationship with the land of the buried gods and the heavenly cloud sea to those demon kings. The sword said again. Hearing this, Long Chen lowered his head and fell silent. Why do I feel a little strange? Didn't they say that the chaotic divine king and the 10 great demon kings are very strong? Why do they need our help? Could it be that they just have an undeserved reputation? The sword was suspicious. Long Chen still didn't say anything. After a long time he smiled and said, I don't know whether they have an undeserved reputation or not, but what I can be sure of is that they must be restrained by Qin Feiyang now. Is Qin Feiyang so capable that he can restrain them? The sword was a little skeptical. You don't know him. He has this ability 100%. Long Chen chuckled. The sword was still skeptical and asked, Then should we cooperate with them? Of course. After all, I promised him last time that I would help him do something. Moreover, if what he said is true and these demon kings want to come to us, it is equivalent to taking the initiative to give us a good fortune. How can we not take a good fortune that is delivered to our door? Long Chen chuckled. That's true. If these demon kings have a good attitude, I can spare their lives. But if they dare to be arrogant and order people around, I will directly send them to hell. The sword smiled coldly. Let's go. Next, you need to keep a low profile. As for me, I need to be more high profile and take the initiative to lure these demon kings to us. Let's see what kind of gift they will give us. Long Chen waved his hand and the sword disappeared. Then a sovereign divine weapon appeared. This sovereign divine weapon was a palm-sized battle shield. It was yellow all over and emitted a dazzling divine light. This was the Earth Dragon Shield, the sovereign divine weapon of the Earth Dragon clan. The other sovereign divine weapons of the dragons were now in Long Chen's hands. Coupled with his own sovereign divine weapon, if the demon kings went to him alone, they might really be like sheep in a tiger's den. Chapter 3800. At the same time, in another canyon, the white-eyed wolf was entangled with dozens of purple gold skeletons. Princess Huofeng watched helplessly from the side. With the white-eyed wolf's strength, it was too easy to kill the purple gold skeletons. But there was no other way. The white-eyed wolf was too playful. He was simply playing with these purple gold skeletons. Princess, the sword of Thanatos contacted me and asked me to tell you and the golden-winged wolf king to immediately go to the rendezvous point between the land of buried gods and the heavenly cloud sea. Suddenly, the voice of the fire phoenix sword sounded in Princess Huofeng's mind. Why? Didn't they go to the rendezvous point with Azure Dragon and Yun Xiang? Princess Huofeng was suspicious. The fire phoenix sword said, the sword of Thanatos said that they are currently in the Chaos Imperial City. What? Chaos Imperial City? Princess Huofeng's expression changed drastically. She looked at the white-eyed wolf and shouted, something big has happened. Quickly end the battle. The white-eyed wolf was slightly stunned. Looking at the purple gold skeletons around him, he grinned and said, I wanted to play with you guys for a while, but I have no choice. My wife has given the order. As a peerless man, I must listen to my wife. As soon as he finished speaking, the supreme profoundness of the supreme laws were activated, and all the purple gold skeletons were instantly wiped out. Who's your wife? Seeing the white-eyed wolf walking over proudly, Princess Huofeng rolled her eyes. The white-eyed wolf stepped forward and hugged Princess Huofeng's slender waist. He chuckled and said, Who else could it be other than you? Hooligan. Princess Huofeng pouted. I am a hooligan. The white-eyed wolf began to take an inch and a yard. He directly leaned forward and asked for a kiss. Don't mess around. Princess Huofeng pushed the white-eyed wolf away and said in a deep voice, Just now, the sword of Thanatos contacted the fire phoenix sword and said that Qin Feiyang and the others are now in the Chaos Divine King. What? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. he shouted. Fire Phoenix Sword, get out here and explain everything to us. The Fire Phoenix Sword flew out from Princess Huofeng's body and she said angrily, "Can't you be more polite? I'm a sovereign weapon after all." "So what if you have a sovereign weapon?" The white-eyed wolf rolled his eyes and asked, "What's going on?" The Grim Reaper's sword didn't hide anything from the Fire Phoenix Sword. After the Fire Phoenix Sword relayed the information to the white-eyed wolf and Princess Huofeng, the two of them looked at each other. They didn't expect that the undead bottleneck breaking pill would actually work on the undead here. The white-eyed wolf came back to his senses and asked, "So now little Qin Zi is going to beat them at their own game and make them suffer?" "Yes." However, it is only Qin Feiyang's guess that the three demon kings went to find Sea Lion King. The Fire Phoenix Sword said, "Even if it's just a guess, it's still worth the trip." The white-eyed wolf chuckled. Soon after, Qi Xiaoyan, the white-bearded old man, the Fire Qilin, Tan Wu, and the Hell God Hound also received the news from the Grim Reaper's sword. At that moment, they all began to plan in their hearts. Chaos Royal City. There was only one tribulation left. The Divine King of Chaos was as relaxed as ever. Even the previous 98 tribulations were shattered by the divine might of the Chaos Royal City, before they could even get close to her. Boom. The last tribulation descended, and the terrifying divine might destroyed the world. At the same time, the Chaos Royal City also erupted with a monstrous might that was even stronger than before. In just an instant, the two met in the sky. In just a moment of stalemate, the divine might of the Chaos Royal City shattered the last tribulation. Is this the strength of the Chaos Royal City? Qin Feiyang and the others were shocked. This Chaos Royal City was like a dominator. As the tribulation dissipated, golden auspicious clouds rolled over. Soon, a golden ray of auspicious light descended. Just like what happened to Qiao Shui, the body of the Divine King of Chaos began to dissipate rapidly. But a while later, the dissipated body began to reconstruct. But her face was still covered by a layer of mist, and her true appearance could not be seen. A moment later, the golden auspicious light faded. The Divine King of Chaos appeared. She was still wearing a black mask on her face, but unlike before, her skin was softer and her eyes were more moving. There was no longer any undead aura on her body. "Congratulations, Divine King. Congratulations, Divine King." The 9 demon kings immediately knelt on the ground and exclaimed. The Divine King of Chaos carefully checked her body for a moment. After confirming that her undead body had been removed, a sincere smile appeared in her eyes. She looked at the 9 demon kings and said, "All of you rise." The 9 demon kings stood up, their eyes burning with passion. If Qiao Shui's transformation could be faked, then the Divine King of Chaos's transformation definitely could not be faked. In other words, the undead barrier breaking pill was really effective. Looking at the 9 people standing still, the Divine King of Chaos was speechless. "What are you guys still standing here for? Hurry up and find the extreme young thunder fire." "Yes, yes, yes. Hurry up and find the extreme young thunder fire." The 9 demon kings quivered and immediately turned around and left without looking back. Madman looked at the backs of the 9 people with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. He transmitted his voice to Qin Feiyang. "Old Qin, even if they find the extreme young thunder fire, don't immediately refine the undead barrier breaking pill for them." "That's right. Let them be anxious and lower their heads to beg us." Yin Xiang nodded and said fiercely, "The other 6 demon kings' attitude towards us is still alright. It's better not to deliberately make things difficult for them. As for Bloodthirsty Demon King, Black Flame Demon King, and Feng Tian Demon King, we really have to let them suffer." Qin Feiyang looked at the backs of Feng Tian Demon, Theta Wang, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. Although he had promised to give them the undead barrier breaking pill, he didn't say that he would give it immediately. Therefore, even if he delayed it until they left the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, it wouldn't be considered breaking his promise. Da-da. Accompanied by light footsteps, the Divine King of Chaos walked to the steps of the plaza. He looked down at Qin Feiyang and smiled gratefully. "Thank you. Senior Divine King is too polite. We are just taking what we need." Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. It's different. In my opinion, whether it's the ruler's divine weapon, the law miniature, or the law inheritance, they are just external objects. But the undead body is different. For example, no matter how strong I am still an undead. To put it bluntly, I am a lonely ghost. Therefore, even if we have an exchange, I should still say thank you. The Divine King of Chaos smiled. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other. It seemed that this Divine King of Chaos wasn't that difficult to get along with. The Divine King of Chaos glanced at the group and smiled. I have always been a man of my words. Since I have promised to give you treasures, I will definitely not go back on my words. When Qin Feiyang and the others heard this, they immediately looked forward to it. The Divine King of Chaos smiled. Tell me, what law inheritance do you want the most? Law inheritance. The eyes of Qin Feiyang and the others trembled. What a big deal. The moment he opened his mouth, it was a law inheritance. Even the strongest law inheritance? Madman asked. Who are you looking down on? Ordinary law inheritance, with my identity and status, can I take it out? The Divine King of Chaos was displeased. Madman was stunned. These words were too bold. However, this daddy likes this kind of bold person. I want the space-time law inheritance. Madman was the first to speak. Space-time law inheritance? The Divine King of Chaos was stunned. He looked at Madman suspiciously and asked, have you grasped the space-time law inheritance? Of course. Madman nodded. The Divine King of Chaos said indifferently, open it and let me take a look. Because only when you have grasped this law inheritance will I give you the inheritance. There's no need for that. Madman pouted. How could he lie? Of course. The Divine King of Chaos' attitude was very firm. There was no room for negotiation. All right. Madman sighed helplessly. With a thought, the power of time surged out. That's true. The Divine King of Chaos nodded. How would I dare to lie to you? Madman chuckled and turned to look at Yun Xiang, who had been staring at him, and said, don't be envious. This is something you can't get. When Yun Xiang heard this, he rolled his eyes with a face full of disdain. Still not convinced? Madman was stunned. Yun Xiang raised his head and looked at the Divine King of Chaos. He cupped his hands and said, this junior wants the inheritance of the law of death. What? The inheritance of the law of death? Madman was stunned. He turned to look at Yun Xiang and asked, have you grasped the law of death? Of course. Yun Xiang smiled proudly and raised his arm. A wisp of the power of death suddenly emerged from his palm. It was like a cluster of black and gray flames, emitting a terrifying aura of death. Damn. It really is the law of death. Madman was shocked. He had grasped the law of death, so he could distinguish the real from the fake at a glance. Don't be envious. This is something you can't get. Yun Xiang returned Madman's words to him without missing a word. His face was full of pride. Madman smiled bitterly. Why is this person also so abnormal? The law of death, space-time, and destruction were the three strongest laws. The key point was that they were the same as him, because he also grasped the three strongest laws. Cough cough. No matter what, she is still the disciple of the princess of the Divine Kingdom, okay? Qin Feiyang reminded secretly. So what if she is the princess of the Divine Kingdom? Madman wasn't convinced. I'm a little angry when you say this. Without the princess of the Divine Kingdom, would there be an ancestor? Without an ancestor, would there be me? Don't forget, what's flowing in my body is the bloodline of the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang stared at Madman with displeasure. This? Madman's expression froze. He smiled awkwardly and said, it seems to be the case. It is. What do you mean it seems to be? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Madman said helplessly, fine fine fine. From now on, I will treat her like my ancestor. That should be fine, right? That's more like it. Qin Feiyang chuckled. But, Madman changed the topic again and said with a smile, if I am really the reincarnation of the Blood Demon King, then I am of the same generation as her. Then, if I call her ancestor, can the princess of the Divine Kingdom bear it? The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. Speechless now, right? Madman smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly with a helpless expression. Chapter 3801. One Spacetime Law, One Death Law. The Divine King of Primal Chaos glanced at Madman and Yun Xiang, and then looked at Qin Feiyang and the others. What about you guys? Daifuku glanced at the Divine King of Primal Chaos, then lowered his head and asked Qin Feiyang via voice transmission. Can I have it too? Of course. This is a great fortune. Qin Feiyang nodded. Daifuku suddenly became excited. He never thought that following Qin Feiyang and the others would be able to encounter such a good thing. He raised his head and carefully looked at the Divine King of Primal Chaos, and said with a humble expression, Lord Divine King, I want the inheritance of the cause and effect law. Is that okay? You also control the cause and effect law? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. Daifuku nodded. With a wave of his old hand, the power of cause and effect emerged. Madman looked at Daifuku in surprise and said via voice transmission, I didn't expect you to have mastered 2 supreme laws. You are much stronger than the ancestors of the Feng people. You flatter me. My cause and effect law is only at the 5th profound. It's not worth mentioning. Daifuku hurriedly waved his hand. Don't be modest. Why don't you follow us from now on? Staying with the Feng people will only bury your talent. Madman secretly instigated. What talent can I have? Daifuku smiled bitterly. Blockhead, one-track mind. Madman glared at Daifuku with disappointment. Mastering 2 supreme laws was already considered a great figure in the Sky Cloud realm, but Daifuku himself didn't know? Okay, I will give you the inheritance of the cause and effect law. The Divine King of Primal Chaos nodded. Thank you, Lord Divine King. Daifuku repeatedly thanked him. What about you guys? The Divine King of Chaos then looked at the Azure Dragon and Qin Feiyang. Elder Qing, you go first. Qin Feiyang turned to Elder Qing and said with a smile. This old man. The Azure Dragon did not stand on ceremony. After pondering for a moment, he looked at the Primal Chaos Divine King and said, I want the law of devour. Then he activated his devouring law. The Azure Dragon had mastered 2 of the most powerful laws, the devouring law and the life law. All right. The Divine King of Chaos nodded. When it was Qin Feiyang's turn, Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment before nervously asking, Senior, do you have an inheritance of the life and death laws? The inheritance of the law of life and death? It wasn't just the Divine King of Primal Chaos. The mad scientist and the others also looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. This guy's appetite was really big. He actually wanted the inheritance of the law of life and death? One had to know. If the Divine King of Primal Chaos really had an inheritance of the law of life and death, after Qin Feiyang comprehended it, it would be equivalent to directly mastering the ultimate meaning of the 3 most powerful laws. They were the law of life and death, the law of death and the law of life. This was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. The Divine King of Primal Chaos came back to his senses and looked at Qin Feiyang. He asked, You comprehended the law of life and death? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Let me see. The Divine King of Primal Chaos hurriedly said. He seemed a little excited. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the law of life and death emerged. The power of death and the power of life merged together without any rejection. It really is the law of life and death. The Divine King of Primal Chaos stared at the power of life and death and muttered to himself. A moment later, seeing that the Divine King of Primal Chaos didn't have any intention of speaking, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but ask, Senior Divine King, do you have it? The Divine King of Primal Chaos came back to his senses and took a deep breath. He shook his head and said, In this world, it's extremely rare to even comprehend the law of life and death. How could there be an inheritance? Qin Feiyang couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment. With a wave of his hand, the power of life and death was withdrawn into his body. He said, Then do you have the inheritance of the law of karma? Because Daifuku already wanted to obtain the inheritance of the law of karma. Yes. The Divine King of Primal Chaos nodded. There's more. Qin Feiyang was stunned. How many inheritances did the Divine King of Primal Chaos have? Madman and the others were also extremely shocked. In the past, they had discussed that the Divine King of Primal Chaos definitely had many divine items. In the end, it was true, and it was far beyond their imagination. Then the inheritance of the law of karma. Qin Feiyang activated the power of karma. Okay. The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled, and then looked at the Blood Ancestor. When he looked at the Blood Ancestor, the Divine King of Primal Chaos seemed a little unhappy. Thinking about it, it made sense. Someone who had once stolen his secret technique was now going to give him an opportunity. Anyone would feel uncomfortable. If you insist on giving it to me, I won't be polite. The Blood Ancestor chuckled. I didn't say that I had to give it to you. The Divine King of Primal Chaos snorted. The Blood Ancestor's smile froze. It seemed that he hadn't said that he had to give them an opportunity. Moreover, it wasn't within the range of the Blood Oath. He had been careless. It was a little too early to be proud. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said indifferently. But for Qin Feiyang's sake, there's no harm in giving you an inheritance. However, I believe that you want this more. As his voice fell, the Divine King of Primal Chaos waved his hand, and a cage condensed from the power of laws appeared in front of him. This cage wasn't big, only about 5 feet. However, there were actually countless souls of the dead trapped inside. It can't be. The Blood Ancestor was shocked. These souls of the dead are the souls of the dead who died at my hands. The weakest ones are purple gold skeletons. Moreover, I have erased their consciousness and refined them. After my refinement, these souls don't have any impurities, and they all contain the power of laws. Don't underestimate them. There are tens of millions of souls of the dead, and the power of laws they contain is astonishing. According to my understanding of the soul-devouring secret technique, the power of laws inside is enough for you to upgrade a supreme law from the first to the ultimate. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said indifferently. Tens of millions. And the weakest ones are purple gold skeletons? Hearing this, the Blood Ancestor's eyes shone brightly. To him, this was even more tempting than the inheritance of laws. Li Feng was the same, and his eyes shone with a green light. Do you want it? The Divine King of Primal Chaos looked at the Blood Ancestor playfully. Yes. The Blood Ancestor instinctively nodded. Then beg me. The Divine King of Primal Chaos said. Beg you. The Blood Ancestor finally calmed down and frowned. You want to take the opportunity to humiliate me? Then are you willing to be humiliated? The Divine King of Primal Chaos smiled playfully. Are you kidding? I have my pride too. The Blood Ancestor snorted. Fine. Then I'll give it to your disciple Li Feng. The Divine King of Primal Chaos waved his hand, and the cage formed by the barrier immediately flew toward Li Feng. You're giving it to me? Li Feng looked at the cage in astonishment. The Blood Ancestor's mouth twitched. He looked at Li Feng and said, Since it's free, why are you being so polite? Take it. Li Feng looked at the Blood Ancestor. You really don't want it? The Blood Ancestor sighed. I can't help it. Who asked me to be respected and doted on my juniors? Take it, as long as you don't forget how good I am to you in the future. That's what you said. There are so many witnesses. If you want to snatch it from me, then don't blame me for betraying my master. Li Feng grinned and put away the undead spirit. Betraying my master? The Blood Ancestor's face darkened. What a white-eyed wolf. However, he also knew that Li Feng was just saying it and wouldn't really do it. After all, they had been together for so many years, and he knew Li Feng's character. Although his temperament had changed because of the loss of his family, his nature was actually not bad. Not to mention other things, one could tell from Li Feng's respect for Qin Feiyang. It seems that you're quite stubborn. The Divine King of Primal Chaos glanced at the Blood Ancestor and waved his hand. An inheritance of the laws of time appeared in front of the Blood Ancestor. What do you mean? The Blood Ancestor was a little stunned. You don't want it? The Divine King of Primal Chaos asked. The Blood Ancestor hurriedly grabbed it and snorted. It's a waste. Hypocrite. The divine king of primal chaos shook his head and waved his hand again. 2 inheritances of the laws of karma, one of the laws of devour, one of the laws of death, and one of the laws of time and space appeared in front of Qin Feiyang, Daifuku, Azure Dragon, Yun Xiang and Madman. The 5 of them immediately held it in their hands, their eyes full of excitement. This was not the ultimate meaning of an ordinary law, but the inheritance of the ultimate meaning of a supreme law. As long as they comprehended these inheritances, they would become the top existences in the sky cloud realm. For them, it could be said that it was a great fortune. Lord Divine King, what about us? At this time, an anxious voice sounded. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at Li Zhongxing. Li Zhongxing looked at the Divine King of Primal Chaos and smiled flatteringly. Lord, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Qiao Shui and the old poison's faces were also full of desire. You still have the nerve to ask. As a member of the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, you actually betrayed your own world and joined an outsider. You should be glad that I didn't kill you. The Divine King of Primal Chaos snorted. Li Zhongxing and the other 2's necks shrunk. When the time is up, you will leave with Qin Feiyang. Don't let me see you in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury in the future. Qin Feiyang, after you settle down, come and find me. I have some private matters to discuss with you. As for how to settle down, the Primal Chaos Royal City is so big. You can do as you wish. After saying that, the Divine King of Primal Chaos turned around and walked through the square, entering the main hall without looking back. Phew! Li Zhongxing and the other 2 heaved a sigh of relief. They had almost caused a disaster. Qin Feiyang looked at Li Zhongxing and shook his head. It's not that I want to criticize you, but you really shouldn't have asked. If she took the initiative to give it to you, you should accept it. If she didn't, don't force it. But this is an inheritance. Who doesn't want it? Li Zhongxing felt wronged. Qiao Shui and the old poison looked at each other with a disappointed expression. It's fine. With your strength, whether it's in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury or the Sky Cloud Realm, you are already the strongest existences. Especially in the Sky Cloud Realm. Apart from Feather Emperor and a few others, no one is your match. Let's talk about it later. The future is long. You can comprehend it yourself in the future. Qin Feiyang comforted. The old poison looked at Qin Feiyang, then at Qiao Shui and Li Zhongxing. He sighed. I am the unluckiest one. You guys have already gotten rid of your undead body, but what about me? I had the extreme young thunder fire, but it ended up benefiting the Divine King of Primal Chaos. Now the extreme young thunder fire that I need is still nowhere to be found. Without the extreme young thunder fire, Qin Feiyang couldn't refine pills for him. Without pills, how could he get rid of his undead body? The most important thing was, now, their freedom was restricted and they couldn't leave the Primal Chaos Royal City. Being trapped here, how could he go out and find the extreme young thunder fire? Li Zhongxing and Qiao Shui were stunned when they heard this. They couldn't help but turn their heads and look at the old poison with sympathy. Compared to the old poison, they were indeed more fortunate. Qin Feiyang looked at the old poison and smiled. Don't worry, I will find a way to get the extreme young thunder fire for you. Really? The old poison looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. Of course. But the premise is that you have to perform well. Qin Feiyang said. No problem. The old poison was overjoyed and said with a flattering smile. Immortal Qin, do you want me to massage your legs or your back? Scram. Qin Feiyang's face darkened. He was already so old, but he was still so indecent. Chapter 3802. Actually, this matter is very easy to solve. Madman patted Old Poison's shoulder and said with an unfathomable smile. Ah! Old Poison looked at Madman in astonishment. He couldn't even leave the Primal Chaos Royal City, yet he still dared to say such big words? Madman chuckled and transmitted his voice. Haven't the Demon Kings already gone to search for the extreme young lightning fire? When Old Qin refines it, he will give you an undead barrier-breaking pill. Old Poison was stunned and hurriedly said, Big brother, don't harm me. I can't afford to offend them. Look at your cowardice. Madman looked down on him. They are demon kings. I have to be cowardly. Old Poison sighed. Madman's face was dark as he said angrily, useless trash. Do you think that if you don't provoke them now, they will treat you well in the future? Old Poison fell silent. Let me tell you, if there is a chance, they will definitely not show mercy to you. Isn't the primal chaos divine king's attitude towards you all before enough proof? So what are you afraid of now? Besides, you have to leave the Sky Bell divine treasure with us in the future. What can they do to you? Madman said. Old Poison pondered for a while and nodded. That's true. Anyway, they won't dare to violate the blood oath and kill us. That's right. Don't be polite to them in the future. Don't be like a mouse seeing a cat. Just be arrogant, and let's see what they can do to you. Madman laughed. Old Poison couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard this. Although the Demon Kings didn't dare to kill him due to the blood oath, the fear of the Demon Kings was deeply rooted in him. So, no matter what the situation was, he would instinctively feel fear when facing the Demon Kings. It would take a bit of courage to break through this fear. Azure Dragon looked around and asked, Fei Yang, are we really going to stay in the Primal Chaos Royal City? What else? Qin Fei Yang was helpless. They had already sworn a blood oath to not leave the Primal Chaos Royal City. But this old man feels that living here, whether it's doing things or talking, it's not very convenient. After all, the artifact spirit of the Primal Chaos Royal City has always been watching us. Azure Dragon transmitted his voice. This ancestor also doesn't like the feeling of being spied on. The blood ancestor nodded. Qin Fei Yang pondered for a moment. He thought, then let's go to the castle. With the castle's gates closed, it should be able to block the prying eyes of the Chaos Royal City. Madman shook his head and said, I'm afraid that even the castle might not be able to block it. After all, its level is higher than the castle. Of course, if it wants to spy on the situation inside the castle, none of us can stop it. But the premise is that it forcefully uses its divine sense to spy on us. If it doesn't use its spiritual sense, it won't be able to break through the castle's defenses. Furthermore, if it truly intends to forcibly peek at us, the ancient castle will be able to discover it immediately and promptly notify us. Qin Fei Yang transmitted his voice. Yun Xiang nodded and said, It is indeed more comfortable than staying in the Chaos Royal City. At the very least, there was some privacy in the castle, unlike in the Chaos Royal City where they were completely exposed to the Chaos Royal City. Qin Fei Yang looked around. There were buildings all around, and there was no place to put the castle. Finally, Qin Fei Yang simply let the castle land on the square again. Living here had its pros and cons. The disadvantage was that it was too close to the Chaos Divine King, which was equivalent to being right under the Chaos Divine King's nose. The advantage was also because of the Chaos Divine King. The Chaos Divine King lived in the main hall beside the square, so if the Demon Kings wanted to scheme against them, they naturally wouldn't dare to be so brazen. In other words, the existence of the Chaos Divine King could act as a restraint on the Demon Kings. When the castle landed in the center of the square, Qin Fei Yang's group quickly entered the main hall of the castle, and then the door quickly closed. Madman chuckled and said, I've never felt so safe inside the castle. From what you're saying, this sovereign has never given you a sense of security before? The castle's displeased voice sounded. Ah. Madman looked at the castle and laughed. You can hear me? This sovereign isn't deaf. The castle said in a bad mood. No sense of security? All these years, if it wasn't for this sovereign's full protection, you little brats would have died countless times. You're really more white-eyed wolf than a white-eyed wolf. Ha! I'm just joking, don't take it seriously. Madman laughed dryly. If this sovereign took it seriously, would you still have the chance to stand here and talk? I'll directly throw you out. The castle said indifferently. Madman bared his teeth. At this moment, a terrifying divine sense rolled in from the outside, directly breaking through the castle's defense and entering the castle. Qin Fei Yang and the others were startled. This must be the divine sense of the Chaos Royal City. What did it want to do? Did it want to keep monitoring them like this? Although the Divine King promised not to kill you, you'd better behave. After a while, an emotionless voice sounded from the castle. Following closely, the divine sense of the Chaos Royal City quickly retreated. You scared us to death without paying with your life? Li Zhongxing was indignant. Couldn't you give us a heads up? You should at least show some respect to each other. I'm afraid that in the future, scares like this will happen often. Be mentally prepared. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. The castle was indeed unable to block the divine sense of the Chaos Royal City. Why do you care so much? They won't dare to kill us anyway. Come, let's sit down and talk. I'll treat you to some authentic divine wine. Madman smiled calmly. He walked to the table and sat down on a chair, taking out a few jars of unparalleled divine wine. Yes, we didn't do anything wrong. Why should we be afraid of them? Yin Xiang nodded and ran to sit next to Madman. He grabbed a jar and laughed. Today's matter should indeed be celebrated. Li Feng also immediately ran over, and almost drooled when he saw the jar. The blood ancestor, Daifuku, and Azure Dragon looked at each other speechlessly. They were stuck in a place like this, yet they were drinking wine to celebrate? Youngsters nowadays were way too carefree. Since we're already here, let's just take things as they come. Qin Feiyang smiled and strode over as well. He took out the ancient dragon god tea Qi Shaoyan had given him and started brewing. He had been in the Sky Bell Divine Treasury for so many years, but he had never had a proper sip of tea. Fine. The blood ancestor nodded helplessly and sat down around the table. What about us? Li Zhongxing looked at the old poison and Xiao Shui. Is there even a need to ask? Of course we need to learn how to adapt to their lifestyle. The old poison chuckled and ran to Madman. He stared at the jars on the table and asked, Is this really divine wine? Of course. It's the real deal. Madman said. Let me take a look. Li Zhongxing ran over with a jar of divine wine in his arms. He tore the seal and opened the lid. Instantly, the image of a dragon roared out. The wine transformed into a dragon. It was indeed divine wine. Both the old poisonous creature and Li Zhongxing's eyes glistened. Madman looked at the two in astonishment before he roared with laughter. Looks like we're all kindred spirits, unlike some people. Drinking tea on such a good day? How despicable. As long as you're happy. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He knew that the madman was talking about him, but he was already used to it. It went in one ear and out the other. This tea is not simple. As the tea fragrance drifted out, a trace of bewilderment appeared in Xiao Shui's eyes. She walked over to Qin Feiyang and looked at the smoke rising from the teapot. You like tea as well? Qin Feiyang blinked out. He looked at Xiao Shui and asked with a smile. I used to try it occasionally. I don't really like it. Xiao Shui sat down beside Qin Feiyang and smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Give it a try later. I guarantee you'll fall in love with it. This is authentic divine tea. Divine tea? Xiao Shui was taken aback. When Li Zhongxing and the old poison heard this, they also hugged their wine jars and ran to Qin Feiyang's side. They curiously stared at the teapot. Damn. What do you mean? You want to eat from the bowl and look at the pot? To think that I treated you guys as kindred spirits. Madman didn't hide it. We'll take it all. Li Zhongxing chuckled. Take it all. It looks like your stance isn't firm at all. Those who aren't firm aren't worthy of being with me. Madman snorted. Li Zhongxing and the old poison couldn't help but roll their eyes. When Qin Feiyang saw the lively atmosphere, he could not help but smile. It had been a long time since he had been this relaxed and carefree. He poured a few cups of tea and pushed them to Xiao Shui, Li Zhongxing, the old poison, Daifuku the blood ancestor, and Azure Dragon. Everyone picked up the teacup and tasted it. They couldn't help but look intoxicated. As expected, Xiao Shui immediately fell in love with the ancient dragon god tea. Do the three of you want to drink it? Li Zhongxing asked as he raised his head to look at the three divine weapons hovering in the air beside him. They were curiously examining the ancient castle. The three divine ruler weapons were stunned for a moment. They then looked at Li Zhongxing, ready to spit at him to death. They were divine weapons. How could they drink it? If you really want to try it, I have a way. Let Qin Feiyang soak a big pot for you to take a bath. Then, you'll be able to taste the tea. It's quite luxurious to bathe in divine tea. Li Zhongxing smirked. Are you messing with us? Are you looking for a beating? The three divine weapons were furious. It was as if he was purposely angering them. Qin Feiyang put down the teacup, looked at the three divine weapons, and said apologetically, I'm sorry. I wanted to let you leave after saving you, but I didn't expect this to happen. I can only let you stay with us for now. The three sovereign divine weapons fell silent when they heard this. Qin Feiyang looked at the three sovereign divine weapons suspiciously. Seeing that they didn't say anything for a long time, he smiled and said, If you really want to blame me, I have nothing to say. After all, this matter started because of me. If it weren't for him, the three divine weapons would be living a carefree and comfortable life. They wouldn't have to suffer like this. Chapter 3803. When the Blood Ancestor heard this, he couldn't help but put down his teacup. He looked at the three sovereign weapons inside. In the end, it's all my fault. If I hadn't stolen the Divine King of Primal Chaos' secret technique back then, why would the Black Flame Demon King come looking for trouble with us? You misunderstood. We don't want to blame you. Seeing Qin Feiyang and the Blood Ancestor blaming themselves, the three sovereign weapons couldn't help but laugh. Ha! Qin Feiyang and the Blood Ancestor looked at each other. They didn't want to blame them. The Golden Bell sighed. Actually, we are thinking about what to do in the future. What's there to think about? When we leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasury, you will be free. At that time, you will be able to soar wherever you want. How can it be that simple? Green Cauldron smiled bitterly and sighed. Do you think the Divine King of Primal Chaos will let us go after you leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasury? Even if the Divine King of Primal Chaos is magnanimous and doesn't bicker with us. What about the Black Flame Demon King? Yes. When the Black Flame Demon King wanted to capture you, we were openly helping you. The Black Flame Demon King wanted to kill us long ago. If he didn't need us as bait to lure you in, he would have destroyed us after you escaped that day. The Golden Bell and the Ancient Pagoda spoke one after another, their words full of worry. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang and the others fell silent. Indeed, with the Black Flame Demon King's personality, once the blood oath was over, he would definitely not let the three sovereign weapons go. Qin Feiyang looked at the three sovereign weapons and asked, Then should I go talk to the Divine King of Primal Chaos again? No. If you go and look for her again, she'll think that you're pushing your luck and making things worse. That will definitely anger her. The Blood Ancestor immediately objected. I don't agree either. The madman shook his head. Then what should we do? Qin Feiyang frowned. How about? Madman rolled his eyes and looked at the three sovereign divine weapons. He smiled and said, Come with us to the Sky Cloud Realm. Yeah. Follow us to the Sky Cloud Realm. Even if they want to take revenge, they won't have the chance. Li Feng nodded. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. If the Green Cauldron three sovereign divine weapons were willing to go to the Sky Cloud Realm, then they wouldn't have refused his invitation. That is indeed a solution, Lu Ding said after a moment of silence. Ah. Qin Feiyang looked up at the Green Cauldron. Lu Ding smiled faintly. To tell you the truth, we have already discussed this. If you really come to save us, you might as well go to the Sky Cloud Realm to have a look. Moreover, this is the only way to escape now. Really? Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. But you can't restrict our freedom, the Golden Bell said. Of course not. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want, as long as you don't do anything outrageous. Qin Feiyang smiled. Green Cauldron laughed and said, Do we look like those cold-blooded Dominator divine weapons? It doesn't look like it. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then that's right. Green Cauldron chuckled. Old Qin, we've really hit the jackpot this time. Jackpot? Madman laughed secretly. Qin Feiyang was also full of smiles. Not only did they obtain so many Supreme Law inheritances, but they also gained the trust of the three sovereign divine weapons. Now the total number of sovereign divine weapons around them had already far surpassed any force in the sky cloud realm. They had to admit that their decision this time was really wise. If they didn't agree to stay in the Chaos Royal City, how could they obtain so many inheritances? One must know. There were a total of 6 Supreme Law inheritances. If they were to rely on themselves to find them, even if they had more than 900 years, it would be impossible to find so many. They might not even be able to find one Supreme Law inheritance. Come on, let's toast and celebrate. Madman laughed. Everyone was grinning from ear to ear as well, and they held up their teacups and wine jugs as they gathered together, causing them to reveal a scene of happiness and harmony. At the same time, outside the city above a mountain range, Bloodthirsty Demon King, Feng Tian Demon King, and Black Flame Demon King gathered together. Their faces were extremely gloomy. This damn little bastard, he really didn't miss anything. I thought he had neglected the others, but I didn't expect him to remember them while refining a pill. Black Flame Demon King was annoyed. Then what should we do now? Do we really have to watch them leave the Sky Bell Divine Treasure in the future? Bloodthirsty Demon King asked. This lord will absolutely not allow this kind of thing. Feng Tian Demon King roared. Then what can you do? We have already made a blood oath to not personally make a move and hurt them. Bloodthirsty Demon King frowned. Black Flame Demon King looked at the two suspiciously and asked, then again, will this blood oath really come true? Who knows? Bloodthirsty Demon King coldly snorted. But this kind of thing, none of them dared to try it. What if it really came true? What if it really destroyed them? Feng Tian Demon King pondered for a while before his eyes suddenly lit up. He looked at the two and said, how about this? Didn't Qin Feiyang and the others also make a blood oath? If they can't leave the primal Chaos Royal City, then we can forcefully take them away. Good idea. This way, if the blood oath really comes true, they will definitely be instantly killed by the blood oath. Bloodthirsty Demon King nodded. Good my ass. Can you grow a brain? If we take them away from the primal Chaos Royal City, won't it be the same as personally hurting them? If the blood oath really comes true, we will also die with them. What are our identities? What are their identities? Is it worth it to die together with them? Black Flame Demon King smiled disdainfully. That makes sense. Feng Tian Demon King and Bloodthirsty Demon King nodded. If they really died together, it would be too unworthy. Let's leave it at that for now. We have seen the method of the blood oath with our own eyes. When we go to find the extreme young lightning fire, we will find an undead to test it out. We will discuss it again after the results of the experiment. Black Flame Demon King pondered for a while and said, okay. Feng Tian Demon King and Bloodthirsty Demon King nodded. Immediately after, the three of them disappeared at the end of the mountain. On the other side, Snow White Queen and Myriad Poisons Demon King walked together, carefully searching for the extreme young lightning fire. Myriad Poisons Demon King suddenly turned to Snow White Queen and asked, do you think Feng Tian Demon King and the others will give up? With their personality, they will definitely think of a way to get rid of Qin Feiyang and the others. Snow White Queen didn't even think about it and smiled. Then should we stop them? Because I think Lord Divine King seems to have a good impression of this Qin Feiyang. Myriad Poisons Demon King frowned. I'm sure. I can see that too. Snow White Queen nodded then said. But why should we stop them? This is their own matter, and you know the personality of Feng Tian Demon King and the others. If we stop them, they will blame us for being nosy. That's true. As long as it doesn't hinder us from getting rid of our undead bodies. Myriad Poisons Demon King nodded with a smile. That's right. In short, I also have a good impression of this Qin Feiyang. Because from his words, it's not hard to see that he is a person who values friendship, understands gratitude, and is responsible. I believe that as long as you get along with him sincerely, you will get along very well. Snow White Queen smiled. Half a day passed. In the ancient castle, seeing that they had drunk enough, Madman stood up and said, let's not keep drinking like this. Let's hurry up and comprehend the law inheritance. Yin Xiang and the others also put down their wine jars. Azure Dragon drank his tea and shook his head with a smile. You guys go, I won't go. Ah. Qin Feiyang and the others were stunned. Didn't Azure Dragon also obtain the law of devour inheritance? Azure Dragon looked at the tightly closed door of the ancient castle with a trace of vigilance and said in a low voice, I won't hide it from you guys. I want this inheritance to be left for that child Shura. What? Yin Xiang was astonished, asking, You're asking for it for senior brother? Yes. Azure Dragon nodded. Qin Feiyang and the others also looked at each other. One must know. This was an inheritance, not a miniature. An inheritance was equivalent to directly giving you an ultimate profound, while a miniature was only to help you open the door to the ultimate. After that, you still need to rely on yourself to comprehend it. These were two different natures. But Azure Dragon was actually willing to give an inheritance to someone else? And it was an inheritance of the strongest law's ultimate profound. This breadth of mind, this generosity, this love and contribution to the younger generation. It was really admirable. Everyone finally understood. Why could the human emperor and feather emperor have such glory today? Why were the human emperor and feather emperor so loved and respected? This was because of Azure Dragon. They were all influenced by Azure Dragon's great breadth of mind. As the saying goes, like father, like son. This sentence could also be used on Azure Dragon and the human emperor. This junior admires you. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, stood up, and bowed to Azure Dragon. The three juniors, Frenzy, Li Feng, and Yin Xiang, also stood up and bowed deeply, because Azure Dragon was qualified to make them bow. I can't accept it. Azure Dragon waved his hand. Old man, after this mess, this ancestor is a little embarrassed. Fine. The blood ancestor helplessly stared at Azure Dragon, took out the inheritance of the law of time, and threw it to Qin Feiyang. Ha! Qin Feiyang looked at the blood ancestor in shock. Old man, are you crazy again? The frenzy also had a look of surprise. Leave it for the white-eyed wolf. Hasn't he always wanted it? Moreover, he has mastered 6 supreme laws, so his future achievements will definitely be higher than this ancestor's. So this inheritance will be of great value to him. The blood ancestor smiled faintly. For the white-eyed wolf? Qin Feiyang and the frenzy looked at each other. This was too unexpected. Li Feng also had a look of shock. When he came back to his senses, he roared, I am your disciple. You should be content. The blood ancestor rolled his eyes at Li Feng. The divine king of primal chaos said that the souls of the dead that he gave to Li Feng were enough to directly upgrade a supreme law from the first to the ultimate. I'm just saying. Li Feng smiled. Of course, he couldn't compete with the white-eyed wolf. He regarded Qin Feiyang as his big brother, and the white-eyed wolf was no exception. Chapter 3804. Qin Feiyang glanced at Li Feng, then looked at the blood ancestor and shook his head. Ancestor, you really don't have to do this. Enough. What's wrong with a man being so wishy-washy? Besides, the human emperor and feather emperor are like brothers to me. It's only right that I take care of you. We'll talk about it later. Do you think this ancestor is just giving you an inheritance? No. This ancestor is giving you the hope and burden of humanity's future. In the future, you will replace this ancestor, the human emperor, the feather emperor, and of course, the Azure Dragon and the other guardian beasts to protect the Skycloud realm. The blood ancestor said. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, took the inheritance, and nodded solemnly. Don't worry, we won't let you down. That's enough. The blood ancestor smiled. Li Feng rolled his eyes and looked at the blood ancestor. Master, in fact, your time law can also be upgraded to the ultimate level. What nonsense are you talking about? The blood ancestor looked at Li Feng suspiciously. He couldn't even leave the primal chaos royal city, so how could he upgrade it? Li Feng waved his hand, and the imprisoned souls of the dead appeared. Your path to success is through them. You want to give them to this ancestor? What about you? The blood ancestor frowned. Who said I'll give them to you? I mean, we'll absorb them together. Didn't the primal chaos divine king say that? These souls of the dead are enough for us to upgrade a supreme law from the first to the ultimate level. My space-time law has already been upgraded to the ultimate level, and with the help of the Ice Phoenix, I've devoured many souls of the dead, which strengthen my space-time law quite a bit. In other words, I might only need half of these souls of the dead. As for you, I believe you've also devoured many souls of the dead over the years, so your time law must have been strengthened a lot. It might even be stronger than mine. So if I'm not wrong, these souls of the dead should be enough to upgrade our space-time law and time law to the ultimate level. Li Feng explained. Yes. Why didn't this ancestor think of this? The blood ancestor slapped his head. Only then did Qin Fei Yang and the others come to their senses. These souls were enough to raise a law from the first to the ultimate level. Li Feng and the blood progenitors' laws of time and space had long since reached the ultimate level. Furthermore, they had devoured quite a number of souls of the dead after reaching the ultimate level. Perhaps the souls of the dead that the Divine King of Chaos was giving them could really help them break through. Qin Fei Yang looked at the blood ancestor and Li Feng. He smiled and said, "Then you can try first. It would be best if it works, but if it doesn't, we'll think of something else." "What is it?" The blood ancestor was suspicious. According to my observations, of the 10 great demon kings, Theta Wang's people are the most hostile towards us. As for the other demon kings, they don't have any hostility toward us, but they don't have any good impression of us either. However, Snow Queen seems to have a good attitude towards us. Who knows, we might be able to ask her for help. Qin Fei Yang smiled. All right then. The blood ancestor looked at the souls of the dead, and couldn't resist the temptation. Qin Fei Yang then looked at Daifuku and said, "Don't tell me that you want the inheritance of the law of karma for your princess?" "What else?" Daifuku asked. Qin Fei Yang smiled bitterly. These people of the older generation were truly admirable. However, this was only limited to people like Azure Dragon, Daifuku, and the blood ancestor. If it were other antiques, would they still want him to give away the inheritance of the ultimate level of law? Dream on. Alright, all of you can go into seclusion. You can choose any cultivation room you want. Patriarch, I'll have to trouble you to set up a time array to save time. As for Elder Qing and Daifuku, don't just sit around. Although you have to give away the inheritance, you still have your law miniature. Qin Fei Yang smiled. I don't need you to remind me. When you go and meet the Divine King of Primal Chaos, be careful. Azure Dragon reminded. I know. Qin Fei Yang nodded and swept his gaze over everyone, feeling gratified. Let's talk about the madman first. Now that he had grasped the ultimate level of the law of thunder, the law of death, the law of war, and the law of slaughter, he already had his own miniature. As for the law of spacetime, the law of spacetime? When Qin Fei Yang thought of this, he was slightly stunned. Previously, when he ransacked the treasury of the black-robed old man's group, he had obtained 2 miniature versions of the law of spacetime. At that time, the madman and Yin Xiang each took one. With the miniature version, why would the madman still want the inheritance of the law of spacetime? Senior brother, did you make a mistake? Don't you have a miniature version of the law of spacetime? Qin Fei Yang looked at the madman suspiciously. I know, but the miniature version hasn't merged yet. The madman nodded. Yes. Qin Fei Yang suddenly patted his head. Back then, after receiving the miniature version, Li Zhongxing immediately brought them to look for Qiao Shui. Then they went to the Flame Mountain Range to look for the extreme Yang Thunder Fire. Then they encountered the old poison. Finally, the bloodthirsty Fiend King appeared, and they came to the Primal Chaos Royal City. Therefore, it wasn't just the madman. Yin Xiang, Daifuku, Azure Dragon, and even Qin Fei Yang didn't merge their miniature versions. The madman chuckled. Now that I have the inheritance, I naturally don't need this miniature version of the law of spacetime. You can leave it to Brother Wolf. After the madman finished speaking, he returned the miniature version of the law of spacetime to Qin Fei Yang. Okay. Qin Fei Yang nodded and kept the miniature version of the law of spacetime. In other words, after receiving the inheritance of the law of spacetime, the madman would have grasped the 2 ultimate levels of the law of thunder and the law of time. The law of death, law of slaughter, and law of war would also have their miniature versions. It could be said that the madman's strength had undergone a tremendous change after entering the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. Yin Ziyang also gained a lot. First was the Yin Yang Mirror, a sovereign weapon, then the inheritance of the law of death, and the miniature version of the law of spacetime. There was also Princess Huafeng. Her harvest could be said to be the greatest. The Foam People's sovereign weapons had all submitted, as well as the Frost Sparrow Sword and the Phoenix Bell. Then there was the inheritance of the law of fire, the miniature version of the law of devour, and the law of karma that Daifuku had prepared for her. Of course, the one who gained the most was Qin Feiyang himself. Although the miniature version of the law of destruction was only the law of destruction, and the inheritance was only the law of karma, he had obtained more than a dozen sovereign weapons. The Ice Phoenix Sword, the White Dragon Sword, the Black Dragon Mirror, the Golden Dragon Spear, the Heavenly Star Divine Sword, the All-Creation Cauldron, the Void Mirror, the Edgeless Heavy Sword, the Silver Moon Divine Sword, the Golden Sun Divine Sword, and now the Green Cauldron, the Crimson Golden Bell, and the Ancient Pagoda. These were the 13 sovereign weapons. This didn't include the Ghost Divine King Throne, the Crimson Dragon Shield, and Li Zhongxing's sovereign weapons that the White-Eyed Wolf had obtained. In short, even if he stayed in the Chaos Royal City for the next few years, he already had the ability to compete with the various forbidden zones. Of course, Longchen might become an accident. If he left Longchen alone, he would definitely be able to subdue many sovereign weapons and find a large number of law of destruction. As for the inheritance, Qin Feiyang didn't consider it. If the inheritance was so easy to find, the last time the Feather Emperor and the others entered the Sky Bell Divine Treasure, the little rabbit wouldn't be the only one who found the inheritance of 2 supreme laws. However, it seemed that he couldn't leave Longchen alone. If Longchen subdued the sovereign weapons and found the law of destruction for himself, it wouldn't matter. But if it was for the dragons, then he couldn't sit back and do nothing. Because if the dragons became stronger, it wouldn't be good for him. Then you guys go into seclusion first. I'll go find the Divine King. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He looked at Frenzy and the others and said this. Then he turned around and opened the gate of the ancient castle. He quickly walked out. Will there be any problems? Azure Dragon was worried. Don't worry. Looking at the Primal Chaos Divine King's attitude, there shouldn't be any problems. Blood Ancestor said, but he wasn't sure. After Qin Feiyang left the ancient castle, the gate of the ancient castle quickly closed. Qin Feiyang glanced at the ancient castle and walked to the side hall. The gate didn't close. Qin Feiyang walked to the gate and looked at the Primal Chaos Divine King, who was sitting above. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, come in." The Primal Chaos Divine King smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang walked into the hall. "Sit." The Primal Chaos Divine King pointed at the stone chair next to him. "Okay." Qin Feiyang walked over and sat on the stone chair. He smiled and said, "I wonder why Senior Divine King called this junior here in private?" The Primal Chaos Divine King said, "Open your law of life and death again, and let me take a good look." "So you're curious about the law of life and death?" Qin Feiyang mumbled, and with a thought, the power of life and death emerged. The Primal Chaos Divine King waved her hand, and a strand of the power of life and death shot through the air and floated above her palm. Then, the Primal Chaos Divine King silently looked at the strand of life and death power. Qin Feiyang was a bit confused. Wasn't it all law energy? What was there to see? After a long while, the Primal Chaos Divine King waved her hand, and the strand of life and death power returned to Qin Feiyang's body. She asked, "What stage should you reach in your comprehension of the law of life and death?" "The 5th profound." Qin Feiyang truthfully replied. The Primal Chaos Divine King nodded and smiled. "Then are you in a state where you can't move an inch? How do you know?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. Although he had comprehended the 5th profound, he had not made any progress in the Supreme Profound. The Primal Chaos Divine King smiled faintly, and a wave of law energy rushed out of her body. Qin Feiyang looked at the wave of law energy and suddenly stood up. How was this possible? It was also the power of life and death. "You didn't see wrong. I have also comprehended the law of life and death. This is why I asked you to come. Because you are the second person I know besides me to have activated the law of life and death. The primal chaos divine king smiled. Then what about your eyes? Qin Feiyang looked at the primal chaos divine king's eyes. The primal chaos divine king's eyes were black and white, very similar to the eye of life and death. But there was no power of life and death, so he was not sure. My eyes? My eyes were born like this, and it has nothing to do with the eye of life and death. I also don't like to activate the eye of life and death, because I don't like to pry into other people's secrets. The primal chaos divine king smiled faintly, and her gaze and tone towards Qin Feiyang were even gentler. Chapter 3805. Born with it. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. But this pair of eyes is not simple. Don't be so curious, because only enemies have the chance to see the true face of this pair of eyes. And those who have seen the true face of this pair of eyes have already become ghosts of hell. The divine king of chaos chuckled. Qin Feiyang was indeed very curious, but when he heard the last sentence, he couldn't help but shudder. So dangerous? Then forget it. But this was something to be happy about. Because it wasn't hard to tell from the divine king of chaos's words that the divine king of chaos didn't see him as an enemy. Qin Feiyang asked, Senior, you must have comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death by now, right? Can this junior see it? No. The divine king of chaos shook his head. What? You don't? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. The ultimate meaning of the law of life and death is too difficult. I haven't been able to comprehend it since I started cultivating. I've been stuck at the highest level. But when I got rid of my undead body, I suddenly had an epiphany, so I'm going to go into seclusion for a while. The divine king of chaos smiled. Seclusion? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and hurriedly said, Senior, you can't go into seclusion at this time. The divine king of chaos looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. He didn't want her to go into seclusion? What's going on? Logically speaking, Qin Feiyang should be very happy to hear that she was going into seclusion. After all, being watched by the divine king every day, no one would feel comfortable. But soon, the divine king of chaos revealed a look of realization and said with a smile, You're worried that the black flame demon king, the celestial demon king, and the bloodthirsty demon king will harm you. You can also see the evil in their hearts? Qin Feiyang was a little surprised. Of course. The divine king of primal chaos nodded and smiled faintly. They are my subordinates. After following me for so many years, I know them all too well. I can tell from their every move what they want to do. Then why are you still in seclusion? You're the only one I trust. Qin Feiyang was speechless. Don't worry. With the blood oath, they wouldn't dare to make a move themselves even if they were plotting something. Furthermore, I will instruct the Primal Chaos Royal City to personally escort you out of here when the time comes. The divine king of primal chaos smiled. That's good. Qin Feiyang breathed a sigh of relief. With the deterrence of the primal chaos royal city, these demon kings did not dare to act recklessly. The reason I called you here is actually because I want to explain the profound mysteries of the laws of life and death to you before I enter seclusion. I hope this will be of some help to you. The divine king of chaos smiled. Upon hearing this, Qin Feiyang's expression suddenly became sluggish. This was simply an unexpected surprise. What was the most important thing in the path of cultivation? Someone would definitely say that it was resources. But in fact, that was not the case. The most important thing was a guide. This was also the reason why people in the world raced to join various forces. Because after joining these forces, there would be someone to teach you cultivation and guide you. Even if it was just a little bit of guidance, it could save you a lot of time and avoid many detours. And Qin Feiyang's current predicament was that he lacked a guide. Because in this world, there were too few people who had mastered the laws of life and death. Before meeting the divine king of primal chaos, he thought that he was the only one in the world who had activated the laws of life and death. Therefore, Everything about the laws of life and death had to be figured out by himself. And now, there was suddenly someone who had activated the laws of life and death. And his comprehension and attainment were higher than his. Most importantly, he was willing to personally teach him. One could imagine. How good would that be for him? The Divine King of Primal Chaos teased. Looking at your reaction, you seem to be a little. Yes. I couldn't ask for more. Thank you, Senior Divine King. This junior will repay you well in the future. Qin Feiyang hurriedly said. What a joke. How could he let such a good thing slip away from under his nose? It could be said that this made him even more excited than receiving the inheritance of the ultimacy of termination. No matter how strong the inheritance of the ultimacy of life and death was, it was only an ultimate law. Once the laws of life and death were comprehended to the ultimacy of life and death, it could crush all the other ultimate laws and even sovereign divine weapons. Although the Divine King of Primal Chaos was only explaining to him the ultimacy of life and death, there was still a long way to go before it could crush all the other ultimate laws and sovereign divine weapons. But without the ultimacy of life and death, how could there be an ultimacy? So it was clear at a glance which was more important. It wouldn't be too late to receive the inheritance of the ultimacy of karma after listening to the Divine King of Primal Chaos's explanation. Boom. As the Divine King of Primal Chaos waved his hand, the door of the hall closed, and the hall immediately became a world that was isolated from the outside world. Apart from the Primal Chaos Royal City, no one knew what the two were doing in the hall. 3 days later, a skinny old man flew into the Primal Chaos Royal City at lightning speed. He was wearing a long black robe, and his deep-set eyes glowed with a dark green light. His thin body, coupled with his erratic and weak aura, made him look like a ghost. However, there was an unconcealable joy on his wrinkled face. Swoosh! The black-robed old man landed in front of the ancient castle's door. He didn't get angry when he saw the tightly shut door. Instead, he spoke in a very polite tone and said with a hoarse voice, Brother Qin, please come out and meet me. I'm sorry, Qin Feiyang isn't here right now. The ancient castle's voice sounded. He's not here? The black-robed old man was stunned. He turned around and scanned the Primal Chaos Royal City. He asked suspiciously, he left the Primal Chaos Royal City? Didn't he swear a blood oath that he can't leave? He didn't leave the Primal Chaos Royal City. The ancient castle said indifferently. He didn't? Then why can't I sense his aura in the city? Is he purposely making things difficult for me? The black-robed old man frowned. Since he didn't leave the Primal Chaos Royal City, he must be in the ancient castle. He was clearly inside, but he said he wasn't. If he wasn't making things difficult for him, then what was? The ancient castle wanted to explain, but after hearing this he couldn't be bothered to waste his breath and remained silent. What do you mean? The black-robed old man's face gradually showed a hint of viciousness. It was as if he was an awakening devil. There seemed to be countless ferocious ghosts roaring around the black-robed old man. It was obvious. He was definitely a devil who killed people like scything flax. But at this moment, with a loud bang, the main hall beside the square opened. The black-robed old man hurriedly looked at the main hall, and saw a white-robed young man walk out with his head lowered. He seemed to be in deep thought. It was Qin Feiyang. What's going on? He actually walked out of the Divine King's palace. The black-robed old man was surprised. After the Divine King of Primal Chaos successfully passed the tribulation, the Fiend Kings immediately left the city to search for the extreme Yang Thunder Fire. Therefore, they didn't know that Qin Feiyang had comprehended the law of life and death, and that the Divine King of Primal Chaos had given them. After Qin Feiyang came out of the main hall, he stopped on the stairs and lowered his head without saying a word. He didn't notice the black-robed old man at all. What are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed? The black-robed old man walked over suspiciously. Even though he was standing at the bottom of the stairs, Qin Feiyang didn't notice. There was a hint of understanding and confusion between his eyebrows. The black-robed old man became more and more confused. He couldn't help but raise his skinny arm and wave it in front of Qin Feiyang, but there was still no reaction. Brother Qin? After waiting for a while, seeing that Qin Feiyang was still the same, the black-robed old man couldn't help but ask. Qin Feiyang quivered and hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice. When he saw the black-robed old man, he was slightly stunned. "I've been waiting for you here for a long time." The black-robed old man smiled bitterly. "Waiting for me?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. When he came to his senses, he hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, I was too engrossed in my thoughts." "It's okay." The black-robed old man waved his hand. The amazing aura in his body had been restrained when Qin Feiyang came out of the main hall. "Senior, are you looking for me?" Qin Feiyang looked around and saw that the black-robed old man was alone, so he asked suspiciously. The black-robed old man directly took out a thunder fire of extreme yang. "So fast." Qin Feiyang was surprised. The black-robed old man smiled and said, "I was lucky. Not long after I went out, I heard about the thunder fire of extreme yang. In that case, Junior will congratulate Senior in advance." Qin Feiyang smiled and reached out to take the thunder fire of extreme yang. "It's all thanks to you." The black-robed old man shook his head. "You're welcome." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, looked at the ancient castle, and said with a smile, "Then I'll go and refine it first. Please wait for a moment." "Okay." The black-robed old man nodded. He was quite tactful. Even when the Divine King of Chaos wanted to enter the ancient castle to take a look at the process of refining the pill, Qin Feiyang didn't let him in, let alone him. Moreover, at this time, he couldn't offend Qin Feiyang. Although he had promised to refine the undead bottleneck-breaking pill for them, there was no time limit. He could refine it now or when he left the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasure. If he didn't know, he wouldn't care. But now that he knew about the existence of the undead bottleneck-breaking pill, and even the Divine King of Chaos had gotten rid of his undead body, he didn't want to wait a moment longer. Not to mention seeing the refined undead bottleneck-breaking pill later. Even looking at Qin Feiyang walking toward the ancient castle now, he couldn't help but feel excited. Finally, he could get rid of his undead body and be reborn as a human. When Qin Feiyang walked to the front of the door, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at the black-robed old man, asking, "May I ask how I should address Senior?" The black-robed old man laughed. "Everyone calls me Ghost Demon King." "Ghost Demon King," Qin Feiyang muttered and laughed. "Then please wait a moment, I'll be right out." "No problem." The black-robed old man laughed hoarsely. Not long after entering the castle, Qin Feiyang came out with an undead bottleneck-breaking pill and handed it to the Ghost Demon King with both hands. "Thank you." The Ghost Demon King happily took the undead bottleneck-breaking pill. "No need to thank me. I only hope that Senior can take care of this Junior in the future." Qin Feiyang smiled. Now that he had offended Feng Tian Demon King, Bloodthirsty Demon King, and Black Flame Demon King, he would try his best not to offend the other Demon Kings in the future. Moreover, there was still a long way to go, and he might need the help of these Demon Kings in the future. It's a small matter. If Brother Qin needs any help in the future, feel free to look for me. How could an old and shrewd person like the Ghost Demon King not understand Qin Feiyang's thoughts? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.